Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Unknown location, Fury, year X784. Loud booms echoed throughout the forested area. The sound of bark crunching and branches snapping as once tall trees fell to the ground from the force generated from the strikes made between the two titans that dared to have their climactic battle situated in the highly vegetated area. Naruto and Gildarts ran alongside each other, navigating through the trees like it was second nature, while simultaneously trying to kill each other. Gildarts punched a hole through a tree, sending the speeding piece of bark at Naruto, who merely ducked his head before going into a forward roll to avoid the failing tree. As he got back up, the blonde turned and took a deep breath. Furyuden, the wind dragon swirled to life as it rocketed out of his jaws. The wind made reptiles' glowing red eyes zeroed in on the ace of Fairy Tail as it tore through the brush. Gildarts smirked as he held up his left hand, a silvery white aura outlining it. He then reached out and crashed the air, causing the air molecules to disperse and literally crash into Naruto's attack, nullifying it. However, Gildarts' eyes widened when he saw Naruto was nowhere to be found within his field of vision. The red-haired mage turned back to face the front, only to see the blonde standing there, as if he were expecting him, hands outstretched, wind gathering around him. Atsugai. Suddenly the force of gravity seemed to have increased tenfold as the landscape was flattened. Everything within a 20-meter radius, ranging from trees, animals and Gildarts, were all crushed by the powerful force of the downward-acting winds of the blonde Dragonslayer's attack. It even had enough force to cause a 10-inch depression in the ground. Naruto's eyes narrowed, sniffing the air with his enhanced sense of smell, his ears twitching as he listened to the world around him. The sound of wood cracking was heard and the blonde looked to where Gildarts had been standing. A pile of completely crushed trees and grass began to shiver and shake before it was sent rocketing every which way as Gildarts stood back up. He cracked his neck and back before chuckling. "You got power, Brad. It's been years since I've had a fight this intense. Your flattery will not spare you." The blue eyes of the Apocalypse Dragonslayer burned with the determination to make the mage before them fall. Gildarts chuckled once more. "Brad, I've lived longer than you." Naruto mentally snorted in amusement. He had trained an equivalent of 90 years. He was ancient compared to the 40-year-old man before him. As said man continued to speak, "In almost every fight I've had, I have never had the need to move from a single spot. The fact that I was running in order to keep up with you does not apply to this. So here's the thing. Give up and let me smash your face in." Gildarts punched his right fist into his left palm. "And you lie there on the ground as you try to beg for mercy and apologizing for hurting my nakama." Naruto chuckled beneath his face mask, said, chuckling growing louder in volume until it became full-blown laughter. Gildarts' eyes narrowed as he looked at the SS-class mage. Naruto wiped away the tear that had formed from his intense laughter before becoming serious. "You wish for my surrender. Never will I surrender. I have the pride of dragon. My draconian pride will not make me do such a thing." "A dragon's pride?" Gildarts questioned. "Now then, you said I couldn't make you move from a single spot." "Very well, Gildarts Clive. If you wish to challenge my abilities, I will show you how so many have fallen by my hands." Naruto suddenly vanished into the wind. A mere gust was all that was left of his presence in his previous position. Gildarts smirked as he raised his hand and blocked the punch to the side of his skull. "You're fast," Gildarts commented. "You have good reflexes." For a human." Naruto replied as he suddenly vanished once more, appearing above Gildarts and sent a wind blade towards his opponent. Gildarts crashed the air and nullified the wind blade only for Naruto's axe kick to drive itself towards him. The red-haired mage raised his arms, crossing them so as to block the kick while he crashed the earth, a small crater forming as the powerful kick had enough force to make Gildarts' arms feel slightly sore. Such physical strength, he thought as he grabbed Naruto's leg. Gildarts pulled Naruto down and slammed the blonde into the ground before throwing him away. Naruto backflipped as he was thrown, easily stabilizing himself before skidding backwards as friction came into play. He came to a stop before snarling at his red-haired opponent. The ace of Fairy Tail glared back at Naruto before making a "come" motion with his hand. The blonde Dragonslayer merely smirked beneath his mask. Shunpo no Kazejin. He vanished into the wind and Gildarts' eyes widened as he frantically began to look around for Naruto. The wind shifted to his left and he turned, quickly leaning back, but his feet remained planted in their original spot as he avoided the flying kick. As Naruto soared past, he quickly ricocheted back from the ground towards his foe. However, as Gildarts was about to counter with his own attack, Naruto vanished before his eyes in midair. He can move in midair? Gildarts asked himself, surprised at the feat. However, he didn't have time to remain surprised as Naruto suddenly reappeared in front of him. Gildarts raised his arms and blocked the double kick to his chest. Gildarts crashed the ground once more so that the impact wouldn't move him. His pride was on the line, and if Naruto managed to move him, things may worsen. For him. Gildarts gritted his teeth as he felt Naruto suddenly push off before clapping his hands together. A gray-green magic seal formed in front of the blonde as he made contact with the earth. Wind blades swirled to life around Naruto's arms. Futon. Kei's no Yaiba. He then took a step forward and vanished from view once more. However, Gildarts suddenly felt himself being attacked from all sides by an invisible force. He gritted his teeth as he used his years of skill and magic sensory abilities to do his best to avoid the strikes. However, his eyes widened as he suddenly felt something warm against his cheek. He raised his hand and looked at the smear of crimson that appeared on his fingers. He was hit, and he was bleeding. Gildarts was suddenly bombarded by uncountable attacks, slashes appearing on his body and clothing, and Naruto then appeared in front of Gildarts, wind blades crossed in front of his chest. Futon. Mugen no Ansatsusha, he said before slashing his wind blades as he uncrossed his arms. Gildarts cursed. Screw it, if I stay in one spot I'm really going to get hurt, he thought before jumping back from the wind blades, though they did manage to slice his tunic. However, the blast of pressurized air that followed after the slash sent him rocketing backwards. The red-haired mage gaped in shock as he felt the pressure against his chest. He flipped in the air to recover only for Naruto to appear next to him. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. A crushing kick slammed itself into Gildarts' side. The ace of fairy tale gritted his teeth as he felt like his ribs were about to snap in two before a sonic boom sounded, the speed at which Naruto moved his leg finally registering. With that, Gildarts rocketed through the air in the direction the kick had sent him, going through numerous trees and other forms of foliage. Naruto smirked, his pupils changing in shape from round to vertical slits. I believe I shall be the one smashing your face in as you beg for mercy. Gildarts Clive. The blonde then took off after his prey. It was time to hunt. Fairy Tale Guild, Magnolia Town. Makarov sat in his office, sighing as he looked through the paperwork that was given to him by the Magic Council. Though, with Natsu, Gray and Urza having left to go and train, the stack of complaints had become noticeably smaller. Elfman's been preaching about being a man to his female client. Kana charged 10 more barrels of beer to the council. Just what is wrong with that girl? He asked himself as he looked at the closed door. He then reached over to grab his cup of tea that he always kept by his side to calm him whenever he read the reports from the Magic Council. However, as he was about to grab it, the cylindrical object released a single sound. Makarov's hand paused as he looked at the cup that held his peppermint tea. A long crack extended from the tip of the cup, snaking its way down to about 1/4 way down the length of it. Makarov's eyes narrowed as he watched his cracked cup, the splinters of the ceramic surrounding its form. This was a gift from Gildarts for my 70th birthday, he muttered, staring at the object. I'm not superstitious, but… Gildarts. Makarov sighed as adjusted the orange and blue hat that lay atop his head. He quickly dropped down from his chair and walked out of the door and through the noisy guild hall. Master, are you alright? Would you like some beer to settle you? I know that tea does nothing for you. Mira smiled at the elderly man. Makarov chuckled as he gave a bright smile to the white-haired S-class mage. I'm fine, Mira-chan. Just worried about Natsu, Urza, Gray and Lucy. Mira nodded before spying a waving guild member who wanted a refill. I'm going for a walk. Alright, but be careful. You're not as young as you used to be. Makarov nodded to the cover girl of the guild before exiting. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Heaven Shaking Event. Unknown location. Fury. The tall trees towered over the ground below. Their beings swayed lazily in the breeze. Leaves floating along the currents. A few birds tweeted and some deer and rabbits enjoyed the cool feeling the breeze gave them. However, the calm atmosphere was suddenly shattered into pieces as several deafening booms echoed through the air. A tree trunk was suddenly shattered as Gildarts flew through it. The red-haired S-class mage stuck out one arm and skidded backwards, using the friction to stop his movement before leaping out of the way as a powerful blast of wind impacted with his previous position. Gildarts gritted his teeth, clutching his ribs where his opponent had struck him. Kuso. That boy hits hard. That kick. He's strong, he is worthy of his title as SS class. I swore my ribs nearly snapped. Gildarts said as he stood back up. A growl was then heard and Gildarts looked up to see Naruto zooming towards him. The red-haired mage quickly stood back up and performed a backflip to avoid the punch to his face, a small crater forming from the force of the impact. But I've got experience on my side, boy. Gildarts mumbled before rearing back his fist. A silvery white aura surrounded it as his crash magic came into effect. Naruto looked up, his sapphire eyes blazing with battle lust. He grinned as he watched Gildarts bring his fist down and a large force rocked the landscape. A gigantic crater formed as Gildarts struck the earth, a large smoke cloud forming as well. He looked around, knowing full well the blonde had avoided his strike. "You're strong, Gildarts Clive," Naruto said as he reappeared behind the fairy tale mage. Gildarts turned around, seeing the blonde standing tall, arms folded with a snarl present on his face. "But I am not feared for nothing." Futon. Rikuden. He launched the drilling air bullet towards his opponent and Gildarts was sent skidding backwards only for Naruto to vanish in a burst of speed, appearing above Gildarts' position. Energy Make. Rasengan. The red-haired mage stared in shock as he watched the spiraling sphere of pure Eternano. "Impossible. Only one person I know is capable of those techniques," he thought. Gildarts gritted his teeth before forcing his hand outwards. He sent a crash pulse, shattering the attack and Naruto was sent skyward, surprising the blonde. "He nullified the magic in my attack," he thought with a confused look. He then looked to see Gildarts push off, jumping towards him. A powerful punch made its way to Naruto's face and the attack made contact. Time seemed to slow down for a moment as the attack registered into Naruto's body before the blonde zoomed down to the ground. A crater formed from the attack before he was sent skidding backwards, knocking down 2 trees in the process. Naruto quickly pushed himself to his feet before seeing Gildarts land in front of him. "You used Energy Make. Only one person is capable of that magic and that is Minato Namikaze, Wizard Saint." "WHORUOGONNAFUUJIN?" Gildarts yelled as he reached towards Naruto's face mask. The blonde's eyes narrowed before grabbed Gildarts' wrist, stopping the man from touching the thing that kept his identity hidden. "I am who I am. Like I said, my identity is of no concern to you. Now die, human," Naruto roared before pulling Gildarts towards him. A cyclone formed around Naruto's leg as he let it loose. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. The kick crashed into Gildarts' body sending him skidding backward and Naruto sped after him. Energy Make. Rasengan Renden. 2 Rasengan formed in Naruto's hands and he sent them forth, but the S-class mage of Fairy Tail twisted his body so as to appear between Naruto's outstretched arms and sent his elbow crashing into Naruto's face, breaking his nose. Naruto gritted his teeth in pain before a punch found its way to his stomach. The wind was knocked out of his lungs as the attack sent him bouncing along the ground. "Kuso. He hits hard," Naruto said as he coughed. He snapped his nose back into place before allowing the seal on his stomach to work its magic and complete the healing process. Having a healing factor was always a plus in the blonde's book. He blinked as a shadow formed over him and saw Gildarts' angry face above him. "Crash magic. Shatter," he said. Naruto's eyes widened before going into a handstand and kicking upwards. Futon. Senpu Kyaku. The kick with the force of a cyclone met the punch that had the strength to shatter the earth. A loud boom echoed as both attacks met, both fighters glaring at one another, putting whatever force they had into their attacks in hopes to overpower the other, but came to a stalemate instead. The 2 powerful titans jumped away from each other to gain some room before Naruto channeled his magic and clapped his hands together, a gray-green magic seal forming in front of him. Futon. Ranryuken, a powerful twister, taking the form of a dragon's head, swirled around Naruto's fist before he shot it forwards. The wind dragon roared as it spiraled towards Gildarts. The physically older man held out his hand and stopped the attack with a crash pulse before rocketing forward with a straight kick. The attack nailed Naruto in the forearm as the blonde had raised it to block the attack. He then grabbed the assaulting limb, causing Gildarts' eyes to widen, and slammed the red-haired man into the ground with enough force to crack the earth. He repeated the action twice more before throwing him upwards. Naruto flew upwards after his opponent and hovered above him before performing a series of front flips. Gildarts opened his eyes, having closed them from the pain he felt, and saw Naruto's rotating form growing closer to him. Crash magic. Break. Naruto's powerful axe kick made contact with Gildarts' fist and Naruto hissed in pain as he felt the tibia bone break. Gildarts then grabbed Naruto's broken leg, making the blonde yelp in pain once more. He then held Naruto's leg, gripping it so that it was straight as a board before slamming his rather sturdy skull against the kneecap. A loud crack echoed through the air as Naruto's leg was broken at the knee. Gripping both legs by the ankles now, Gildarts began to do a series of front flips to build momentum as gravity took a hold of them. He slammed Naruto into the earth making an imprint of the blonde. A shockwave formed from the impact, but the blue-eyed blonde recovered quicker than Gildarts expected, lashing out with his good leg and nailing the man in the chin. He rolled away as Naruto pulled himself to Ein Dragon his opponent's way. As the Furyuden distracted his opponent, Naruto watched as a red glow surrounded his leg. The seal his biological parents gave him, due to its healing factor granting abilities, made things easier for the blonde as he felt the bone snap back into place and the fractures heal within a matter of seconds. However, due to Gildart's mixing physical moves with his magic, the automatic defensive shield that often formed during his times when Acnology had tried to kill him, would not be able to form as a result. Naruto looked up and saw Gildarts had already dealt with the Wind Dragon attack and was now charging forwards. Climbing to his feet, Naruto feigned weakness in his previously broken leg, making Gildarts smirk. However, said smirk was suddenly replaced with open jaws. "Deception is something I'm rather good at," he said with a toothy grin, similar to that of his human father. The powerful kick from Naruto's now healed leg suddenly found its way into Gildarts' chest, causing spittle to fly from his mouth. The kick sent the ace of Fairy Tail through a boulder and a few more trees. The red-haired mage quickly got back up and saw Naruto heading towards him at a fast pace. Gildarts ducked beneath the stab to his throat from Naruto's wind blade before rising upwards and going into an uppercut. However, his eyes widened when he saw the image of Naruto suddenly flicker and vanish as his hand passed through it. Thought projection? No. It's an... His eyes widened as Naruto appeared in front of him once again, two spiraling spheres of magic forming in his palms. An after image. I am that fast, Ace of Fairy Tail. Naruto spoke in a tone that sent chills down his foe's spine. Naruto thrust his arms backwards and then forwards with great speed and strength. Energy make. Double Rasengan. Naruto roared as he planted the two spheres into his enemy's stomach. The S-class mage spiraled through the air, through more trees as well as another boulder. It appeared that the battle between these two would move on throughout fury with the way things were going. Gildarts caught the arm Naruto aimed for his chest, a slight humming sound indicating that high-speed wind blades were surrounding his hand, hoping to impale his heart. The red-haired man noticed the current blowing against his chest and noticed Naruto was extending the length of the invisible blade. Crash magic. Force. A powerful force disrupted Naruto's attack and slammed into him, sending his head reeling backwards from it. He grabbed Naruto and kicked off of him, sending Naruto crashing into a tree before slamming a kick into Naruto's chest. A cough exited the blonde's mouth as the impact was devastating, sending him through the tree he had crashed into. Naruto coughed up a glob of blood as the impact had ruptured his body. Naruto quickly climbed to his feet and spit out what little blood was left in his mouth. Gildarts kicked away the broken trunk with surprising strength, both surveying the damage they dealt one another. Gildarts had a numerous amounts of cuts from where the wind attacks Naruto sent at him had managed to graze him, as well as two large circular burns marks that Gildarts was currently clutching from when Naruto hit him with the double Rasengan strike. Naruto, due to his healing factor, was not damaged whatsoever, but the coughing fit he was currently undergoing showed that Gildarts' punch had done its work. The blonde growled as he wiped away the blood that had accumulated in his palm, blowing it away with a gust of wind. "Tell me, Oguna Fujin." Gildarts panted, "Why are you like this?" "That is none of your business. I was raised to be the perfect being. I was raised to be the strongest, the epitome of my Two-Sans training's results. Then if you were like this, why did you save those villagers from Tully Village? They praised you, called you savior and hero. Why is someone like that given the title of SS-class criminal and flee on sight?" Gildarts questioned once more. Naruto growled as he pictured the young blue-haired teenager he and Kurama had saved as a result of destroying the Black Knight Dark Guild as well as the Devon Theft family. One act-based sympathy and empathy does not make me a hero. I am no hero. I am no savior. I am destruction incarnate, he said with a hard glare. Gildarts' eyes narrowed as Naruto stepped towards him. "Enough talk, fairy tale mage. It is time I crush you," Naruto said before vanishing in a blur of speed. Gildarts' eyes widened as the sonic boom reached his ears. How did he break the sound barrier? Is he really that fast? He thought. His answer given to him in the form of a bone-crunching kick to the spine, causing his body to nearly fold in half from the force. The red-haired man rocketed forward, Naruto running alongside his flying form before grabbing him out of the air and slamming him into the ground. The heavy man was surprised as Naruto lifted him back up into the air with only one arm, his surprise replaced with the feeling of pain as he was punched in the stomach. A blow to the chin snapped his open mouth closed before an elbow greeted his chest. He was about to yell out in pain when a snap kick met his diaphragm, but a quick jab to the larynx silenced his cry. Naruto then stepped forward, raising his elbow high and bringing it down on his red-haired opponent's forehead, disorienting him before stepping forward, positioning his right leg between Gildarts' legs while placing his left leg ahead of him, placing it down behind the Ace of Fairy Tail's right leg. Naruto reached over, a vice-like grip wrapping itself around the crash magic user's throat. Using the momentum from his forward reach, Naruto twisted his body and moved his gripping arm downwards. With his left leg having been placed behind Gildarts' right, the red-haired mage's balance was thrown off, allowing Naruto to smash him into the ground. The impact was great enough to crack the earth. Energy make. Rasengan. Gildarts stared at the blue orb of grinding magic energy as it hovered above him. His body seemed to freeze as Naruto aimed to tear apart his face with it, time seeming to slow down for the ace of fairy tale. Insert music. Fairy tale main theme. No, I can't die. I've come too far to lose now. Makarov. Natsu. Urza. Gray. Mira. Kano. All the faces of his nakama flashed through his mind. A determined gaze flashed across his face. I can't go down. I am a fairy tale mage. Magic energy exploded out of him and shattered Naruto's attack like it was glass and sent the blonde flying back. Gildarts gripped the fist aimed for his throat before redirecting it and punching Naruto in his face. Another punch followed, sending Naruto stumbling backwards. Gildarts followed up with a punch to the diaphragm, knocking the air out of Naruto's lungs before twisting and crashing his elbow into the same spot. Naruto's eyes widened as his lungs were deprived of air. The knee aimed to hit his chin, but the blonde Dragonslayer leaned backwards, avoiding the blow. Jumping back a few feet, he caught his breath and formed blades of wind around his arms. Futon. Kei's no Yaiba. He yelled as he slashed his blades in an X shape. Gildarts gave out a cry of pain as his clothes now bore two fine lines and red suddenly spewed from the slash wounds he gained. Futon. Shikaze no Mai. Naruto slashed one blade downwards, but Gildarts cartwheeled out of the way before raising an arm to block the slice to his head, striking Naruto at the joint, making his arm bend and miss the target he was aiming for. Naruto then went with the momentum of his strike and twisted, slamming a powerful roundhouse kick to Gildarts' side, making him roll on the ground. But the red-haired man continued to roll, allowing Naruto to miss the double forward thrust. A reverse upward diagonal strike from his left blade sliced the tree Gildarts was leaning against in half before Naruto brought down the second blade in a downward vertical slice. Gildarts twisted and sidestepped the strike, feeling the wind from the attack touch his face from the speed they moved at. Seeing his chance, Gildarts punched Naruto in the ribs before spinning and sent a straight kick to the same area. The bones cracked and creaked from the follow-up double kick he performed, but Naruto raised his wind blades, making Gildarts halt his next kick and draw back his leg as Naruto went to cut it off. Once he saved his limb, Naruto took the shot to form a series of strikes to Gildarts, decorating his body with thin, yet numerous, slash marks. A forward kick slammed into the ace of fairy tale's gut, but the bearded man refused to go flying, stamping his foot into the earth to hold his ground. Gildarts charged crash magic into his fists and spun on his heel and positioned his left arm above his right before letting both fists fly. The two strikes hit Naruto in his stomach, sending Naruto skidding backwards as the blonde also refused to be lifted off of his feet again. Stabbing his wind blades into the ground, Naruto sliced open the earth in an effort to stop his movement. After succeeding in doing so, he sped forth, but Gildarts jumped back, his eyes now used to Naruto's high-speed movement, as Naruto went for a double vertical slice, one going upwards, the other going downwards. However, Naruto went with the momentum of his movement and slammed an axe kick against Gildarts' shoulder. The ground suddenly burst apart, turning into a crater. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw the smirk on Gildarts' face. He used his crash magic to break apart the earth and cushion my blow. A smart move, but not smart enough. Naruto backflipped as Gildarts reached to grab his limb before rocketing towards his foe. Said foe ducked out of reflex as he saw Naruto reappear above him, but Naruto suddenly moved downwards, showing Gildarts his wind blades were gone, now replaced with a Rasengan hovering over his right palm. Energy make. Udama Rasengan, Kuso. Gildarts cursed as he channeled crash magic into his raised arms and the attack met his limbs. However, the attack had so much power in it that it didn't even completely disperse upon contact, causing the crater Gildarts had formed to expand in size as magic energy rocketed outwards from the spherical attack in a dome shape. And earth flew through the air as the Udama Rasengan's blast radius scattered the pieces of debris. Gildarts skidded backwards, his clothes and skin covered with smoke, small burns and dust from Naruto's attack. But the momentum from his movement caused his body to bend backwards, and that coupled with the blast wave from the attack resulted in Gildarts becoming airborne. But he managed to stretch out his hands, digging his fingers into the ground and tore his mauled trenches in the earth with them. When he finally came to a stop, he saw Naruto was already heading towards him. Gildarts charged magic into his fist and punched the ground, crashing it, causing a large slab of rock to rise up. Gildarts then spun and kicked the large piece of rock at Naruto. However, before it even made contact with the blonde, said blonde had used raw physical strength to shatter the rock with a punch, but he was caught off guard as Gildarts had used the rock as a distraction and managed to score 2 punches to the face. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer grunted in pain before Gildarts clasped his hands above his head, bringing them down on Naruto's skull. The fact that he had loaded the blow with crash magic along with his own high level of physical strength caused a large crater to form from the attack as Naruto met the ground, hard. A large shockwave resulted, causing the cracked earth to become even more damaged, uprooting trees and sending wild animals scurrying away in an effort to avoid being kill zone makeshift war zone. Naruto grunted as he forced himself to his knees and then onto his legs. He continued to rise, albeit slowly, however a hard knee strike crashed into his chin, snapping his head upwards before Gildarts bent low. Pushing up through his knees, the momentum traveled upwards and a powerful uppercut slammed into Naruto's body. The force caused his body to shake for a moment before he rocketed straight into the air. A pillar of white and silver indicating Gildarts had used his crash magic to enhance the power of his uppercut. Gildarts covered his eyes with his hand as he looked up at where Naruto was going. His form getting smaller and smaller, however his eyes widened as Naruto fell straight back down. It appeared as if Naruto was dive-bombing Gildarts' Clive. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Blind Animal. The S-class mage quickly jumped back as he stared at the falling blonde's form. Naruto's form slammed into the ground, however, the impact the blonde made caused a large earthquake to result. The land cracked and tore open, the land itself changed as pillars of stone and hard earth rose upwards, some areas forcing themselves downwards. Trees bent back before snapping in two, scattering alongside the other fallen members of vegetation, and to top it all off, a dome of dense black and dark blue colored magic energy rocketed outwards from the point of contact Naruto made with the earth. All was silent for a seemingly endless period of time. There was no sound of animals making their various cries. There was no sound of trees snapping from the aftermath of the cataclysmic crash. Then the silence was broken. The wind gently howled as Gildarts rose up, having nearly been flung back from the force of the earthquake in the dense magic dome. The giant plume of smoke rose into the air and Gildarts' eyes narrowed in an effort to see beyond the barrier that obscured the view of his opponent. Suddenly, as he was looking at the brown smoke, a pair of shining white orbs stared back at him. Blue and black wisps of magic stabbed through the thick cloud of smoke and dust before it dispersed to reveal Naruto in all his glory. His blonde hair was wilder than before, his pale white eyes shining with the ferocity given to him by his draconian parent. His fangs were bared, claws ready to tear flesh from bone. The aura of the apocalypse dragon surrounded the blonde man, giving the feeling that death itself had arrived. "So it's true then? You're a Dragonslayer," Gildarts said, panting. Naruto snarled at his opponent before taking off. Gildarts' eyes widened as Naruto seemed to be moving faster than he had ever moved before. "What the? He's faster now," he gaped as he raised his arm, blocking the heavy blow to his skull. However, the ground cracked apart once more, causing his boot-covered feet to sink into the earth. "So heavy," he grunted as he tried to hold off his opponent's strike. Naruto gave a roar and a pulse of black and blue magic energy rushed out of his body, sending Gildarts flying backwards. The red-haired man managed to right himself, but a kick to the stomach met him just as quickly. Once more he was sent back, through the destroyed land, blood escaping his lips. He skidded backwards before slamming headfirst into a thick boulder. Clutching his painting noggin, the pained mage stood back up, a stream of blood moving from his skull and down his face. He looked back up to hear a large earth-shattering sound. He cursed as Naruto stood before him in a crater caused by his own landing. The blonde Dragonslayer growled before holding up his left hand. The powerful magic of the dragon coated the hand and took the shape of a clawed fist. Naruto took off towards Gildarts, who quickly charged crash magic into his own fist. He charged through the small space that separated himself from Naruto and both limbs flew forth towards each other. A large, deafening boom followed by a devastating shockwave left the point of collision between the two powerful mages. The two struggled for dominance, but Naruto snarled before channeling the magic of his dragon throughout his body in much larger quantities. Gildarts tried to match it, crashing the pure magic energy into mere particles of eternano. But the rate at which Naruto was increasing his magic was becoming impossible to keep up with. In the end, Gildarts felt his arm being pushed. Basist of the Apocalypse Dragon's sun plowed its way through to the man's body. Time slowed down for Gildarts as he registered the act of being struck with the force that rivaled Makarov's at half his full strength when in Titan form. To make things simple, it was a very painful blow. Taking advantage of his lack of defensive capabilities, Naruto lashed out. He punched Gildarts in the side, his ribs cracking. Another punch followed up to the stomach. Naruto twisted and drove a straight kick into the same spot. Blood continuously flew from Gildarts' mouth from the brutal strikes. A slash tore through his cloak, getting rid of it as the string tying it around his neck was torn through with ease. Along with the cloak being torn off, 5 slash marks appeared on the Ace of Fairy Tail's chest, leaving 5 deep gashes of crimson on his body. Blow after blow rained down upon the Ace of Fairy Tail, who barely managed to infuse his body with crash magic to lower the force of the blows and survive them. Naruto punched Gildarts multiple times across the face before twisting and crashing an elbow into the red-haired man's chest. Gildarts was about to fly back, but Naruto had quickly reached out, thus denying the man the chance to get away by being sent flying. Naruto then slammed his knee into Gildarts' gut before spinning around rapidly and crashing Gildarts into the ground. Gildarts grunted before lashing out with his legs and kicked Naruto off of him. However, the blonde tumbled through the air, slamming his feet against a tree before kicking off. Naruto slammed into Gildarts, performing a lariat that sent both fighters to the ground. Gildarts snarled as he flipped their positions that he was now on top of Naruto. He sent a flurry of punches down on Naruto's face before slamming a hammer strike to the face. Naruto roared in pain before releasing a pulse of magic power. Gildarts flipped as he landed and crossed his arms to block the axe kick that Naruto tried to attack him with. Right punch, left punch, spin kick, roundhouse kick, uppercut, headbutt, left hook, right hook, left elbow strike, spin kick. The attacks clashed against one another one after the other. The attacks nullified each other as Gildarts' crash magic and Naruto's Dragonslayer magic collided. Shockwave formed after each collision, however Naruto reversed his rotation and jumped up and spun in mid-air, sending out multiple kicks. Gildarts raised his arms to block the kicks, but the kicks were so numerous that they eventually broke through his guard. A spin kick landed against Gildarts' shoulder, nearly causing his bone to break, but his body refused to break and so he merely flew through the air and through the edge of the forest. Naruto roared as he broke through the foliage with a magic pulse, revealing that the two opponents had indeed cleared the large forest, now at the coastline of the Furian Sea. Gildarts rose up from the salty seawater and coughed, staining the blue waters with red. Insert music. Fairy Tale Toki Hinata, Mokashiryu no Jinshinkyaku. A shroud of black and blue magic coated Naruto's leg. Gildarts coughed before stamping his leg on the ground. He crashed the water, sending a large pillar of the salty liquid at Naruto. However, Naruto's kick sliced through the waters before landing in Gildarts' previous position, causing a large crater and a large amount of sea spray to sniff the air as his foe was no longer in his field of vision. His eyes widened as Gildarts suddenly appeared behind him. Mokashiryu no Zanso. Naruto's arms became coated with the Dragonslayer magic, taking the shape of talons. He quickly spun and Gildarts' eyes widened as his head was separated from his body. The body fell to the ground and Naruto snarled in anger as he watched the body flicker out of existence. A solid thought projection. Crash magic. Force. Naruto's back was suddenly hit with a large amount of force, causing his back to bend, nearly folding his body completely in half before he was sent flying through the air and skipping over the water. Naruto righted himself only for Gildarts to send a grid-shaped magic attack at him. Crash magic. Dispersion. Naruto watched as cubes of water and sand were sent through the air. Naruto cartwheeled out of the way of the dispersion attack only to see Gildarts fall towards him. The crash magic infused kick went towards him, but Naruto's arms became similar to the wings of Agnologia. Mokashiryu no Habataki. The wings of pure magic energy extended towards Gildarts as Naruto made a flapping motion with them. But Gildarts' attack tore through the attack, crashing the magic into mere ether nanoparticles. Naruto's white eyes narrowed as he growled in bestial manner. He jumped and a loud shockwave occurred within the air and Gildarts' eyes widened as he saw Naruto, his hand coated in magic, had caught his kick. Gildarts twisted, freeing his captured leg due to the rotation and slammed a powerful axe kick to Naruto's skull. The blonde rocketed downwards, but he twisted and inhaled deeply as Gildarts fell after him. Magic energy, black and blue in color, swirled within his jaws, his eyes shining brighter than before. He then inhaled deeply and condensed the magic energy within his lungs before rearing his head back. Mokashiryu no Hoko. The attack rocketed forth, the powerful roar of the Apocalypse Dragon screamed through the air, rising towards the ace of Fairy Tale. Crash magic. Disintegration. Gildarts clasped both hands above his head and a powerful sphere of silver-white magic energy coated his hands. He then brought them down against the attack and Gildarts grunted in effort as he felt resistance. Never had he met an attack so strong that he had to use one of his strongest spells. He gave a loud yell as he pushed forth, tearing through the Apocalypse Dragonslayer's attack and towards the blonde. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he saw his attack being literally disintegrated. A powerful mage to have been found in Fairy Tale of all places. They may have some promise after all. But you are dragging this on for far too long. I pledged to kill you earlier, Gildarts Clive. And I will carry out the task. Naruto growled before charging more magic into his roar. The attack grew larger and Gildarts was now slowing in his descent as he plowed through the attack. Kuso. Just what kind of power does this brat have? Gildarts pushed more power into his fists and the dragon's roar met with the disintegrating spell. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw his attack was completely dispersed as he saw Gildarts began to punch away at it. Naruto quickly jumped back as Gildarts slammed into the sands of Fiore's coastline, causing a large crater. The former cape-wearing mage leapt out of his crater and twisted, driving a kick into Naruto's chest sending him backwards, but Naruto smirked as he went with the momentum, going into a backhand spring before planting his feet against the bark of a tree, shattering said bark and causing the tree to fall as he pushed off of it. Mokashiryu no Kurokiba. His left fist became coated in magic energy that took the image of Agnologia's head, fangs bared. The red-haired mage jumped backwards, landing within the surf as Naruto's attack caused a giant pillar of sand to rise. The particles of silt and weathered rock fell back down, only for Naruto to burst though. Gildarts' reflexes acted on autopilot as he avoided the wild, but strong and fast, slashes of his opponent. Mokushuhiryu no Shippo. The tail strike landed against Gildarts' ribs, cracking 3 of them as he tumbled through the waters. He got back up only to counter with a crash-infused punch to counter Naruto's next attack. Mokushiryu no Soso. Twin spears of Dragonslayer magic, similar to that of Agnologia's twin spear-like tail, lashed out at Gildarts. His punch having dispersed the tails upon contact causing a large shockwave, he went into a backhand spring to avoid the kick Naruto aimed at him only for Naruto to take off as soon as he met the sea-covered sands. He ducked and weaved through the slashes on the knee to the stomach. The wind exited his lungs before Naruto spun and crashed a powerful elbow strike to the skull sending him rolling backwards. Naruto then coated his body with his draconian magic, the image of Agnologia forming behind him, looming over the blonde in a menacing fashion. "I will destroy you." Gildarts Clive. Naruto snarled as he fell to all fours, as if he were an animal. He then took off towards his foe and raised his arm, coating it in Dragonslayer magic. Mokushiryu no Hakai Sume. Gildarts cursed as he raised his arm in a desperate attempt to block the strike. The attack is like Natsu's, it just hits with great force and doesn't cut. Gildarts reassured himself, but his hypothesis was proven false as he felt his arm suddenly feel lighter and red splashed across his vision. Naruto had cut through Gildarts' forearm. The dark-eyed ace of fairy tale stepped backwards as Naruto held the piece of his arm before burning it with his magic. Gildarts screamed in pain as blood gushed from the limb, turning the clear waters crimson. The fact that some of the waves managed to touch the wounded limb didn't help due to the fact that the salt in the water made it burn. Gildarts continued to cry out in pain before Naruto grinned widely. "Allow me to help you with that." Naruto chuckled darkly before speeding towards the red-haired man and sliced off the remaining piece of the arm at the shoulder. The entire left arm began to burn from the intensity of Naruto's magic. Gildarts continued to yell out in pain, though it was unfortunate that no one would be able to hear him as Naruto went for the final blow. The claws of the Apocalypse Dragon stabbed forth towards Gildarts' heart, but the physically older man reacted just in time. He punched Naruto's hand with his right fist and diverted the strike, but the spear-like motion swerved, aiming downwards and to the left once more, impaling itself through the thigh muscle of Gildarts' left leg. He howled in pain as Naruto roared with the ferocity of a dragon and in a powerful horizontal motion. Naruto withdrew the limb cutting through Gildarts' leg and made it useless as it hung by nothing more than a few hundred strands of muscle fiber. Gildarts coughed up a glob of blood, and the mass of red blood cells had struck Naruto in the face. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer roared as he cupped water and doused his face, trying to cleanse it of the blood that blinded him. Gildarts saw his chance. "I might not get a chance like this again and I may not kill him, but at least I'll live to tell the tale." Gildarts thought as he charged his magic into his fist. He gave a loud shout just as Naruto's head snapped up, cleansed of blood. Naruto twisted to avoid the strike, but Gildarts still managed to make contact. Crash magic. Shatter. Naruto roared in pain as Gildarts' crash magic-infused fist met his shoulder. The sound of bone cracking and splintering met his enhanced hearing. If one could look inside Naruto's body, they would see the entire shoulder joint had been crushed and lengthy, jagged cracks formed on his humerus, extending all the way to his radius and ulna. The left arm of Naruto Uzumaki had been broken to the point that it would take at least more than a month to heal even with his enhanced healing factor. Crash magic. Force. Gildarts' magic was nearly running on empty, so it was the best attack he could manage. He punched Naruto in the chest and the blonde's white eyes widened as he felt the force enter his body and even going so far as to extend past his body and resulted in a shockwave that sent water everywhere. Naruto snarled as he felt his body flying through the air, but before he went down he managed a final strike. Despite taking Gildarts' limbs, Naruto wanted to leave another mark. He lashed out with his claws, extending them and raking them across Gildarts' chest. The 5 claw marks going from his left pectoral to his bottom right abdominal muscle. Gildarts released another cry of pain before the adrenaline and the blood loss caught up with him. He fell into the waters and red surrounded him. Naruto crashed into the rocks near the shoreline, leaving an imprint of his body in the stone. He coughed up a large amount of blood before falling to his knees as he fell away from the rock. He coughed a few more times, more blood expelling from his body before clutching his chest with his right hand. He looked down at his chest to see a neat hole in the shirt as well as a large red spot that would surely remain on his body till the end of time. Naruto released one final roar before the Dragonslayer magic left his system, his blue irises and pupils returning as the pure white glow of his eyes left him. Then, Naruto fell. Kurama sighed as watched atop the rock Naruto had crashed into before grabbing the blonde. "I swear kid, the more times you fight, the more I have to watch over your sorry ass," Kurama commented before gaining a serious look on his face as he saw that Gildarts' strike to the blonde's chest had extended through to his back. This is going to leave a scar, and judging from the fact his left arm is in that position, I would say the fairy tale mage shattered it. He really does earn the title of Ace of Fairy Tale. Kurama thought as he looked at the bleeding, dismembered, unconscious Gildarts. Kurama spread his wings and took off over the forest to head towards the one place that would hold the necessary things to heal Naruto. The mountains of Clovertown, the former nest of Agnologia. As Kurama and Naruto had left, a figure exited the destroyed edge of the forest and gasped when it saw the bleeding Gildarts. Running as fast as her old legs could carry her, she went over to the dismembered mage. Said figure was a pink-haired woman who appeared to be around Makarov's age, give or take a few years. Her wrinkled skin was rather pale and she had crimson eyes with vertical slits for pupils. Her pink hair was tied into a neat bun. She wore a white blouse and a navy blue colored dress that extended to just below her ankles. A pair of high-heeled, black boots was worn on her feet, and covering her body was a large black cloak. This was poor Lyuzuka, former member of Fairy Tail and official doctor to many mages of the guild. Flashback a few hours ago, poor Lyuzuka's house, East Forest, Fury. Makarov knocked on the door of the pink-haired woman's house. "What?" the human-hating hag snarled as she stared at the dwarf of a man she had once called a guildmate. "Hey, poor Lyuzuka-chan." Makarov gave a friendly wave to the much taller woman. The crimson-eyed woman sighed as she opened the door wider and stepped aside, allowing the orange and blue hat-wearing man to enter. "So how have you been, poor Lyuzuka-chan?" Poor Lyuzuka didn't respond as she handed Makarov a glass of water, which he thanked her for. "Shut up, Makarov," she stated sternly, her trusty whacking broom of eternal suffering held in her hands. "What the hell do you want? Why are you here?" she asked. Makarov drank the water until the glass was empty. He rested it down on the small table before turning to the former member of his guild. "Something's going to happen. I don't know when and I don't know why, but I need you to go and find Gildarts." Poor Lyuzuka's eyes narrowed at the mention of the man who had once destroyed her walls on more than one occasion. "Why? Gildarts is a big boy now, he can take care of himself," she replied. "Please, poor Lyuzuka-chan. I've had this bad feeling ever since I sent him off to fight the Oguna Fujin and then my cup. The one Gildarts gave me for my birthday, so I knew something was." He was silenced as the whacking broom of eternal suffering was brought down on his noggin. You. Poor Lyuzuka's bangs shadowed her face, but the venom in her voice was evident. Her head snapped up as she clutched broom so tightly, the handle snapped. "You idiotic old fool. You sent an S-class mage after an SS-class mage, and not to mention the fact that he was labeled flea on sight. What the fucking hell is wrong with you, Makarov?" Makarov gulped, and knacking the floor as the taller woman loomed over him. "You know very well what had happened the first time people tried to take on those two monsters. The Oguna Fujin and Onibi Myobu are not to be trifled with. You have no relation to him whatsoever, so why the hell would you send Gildarts after them? They made my children bleed and they insulted the guild, the beliefs we follow, and made my children cry," Makarov stated as if it were the most obvious answer in the world. "That is something I will not let go of, poor Lyuzuka-chan." He was then put into a state of shock as the pink-haired woman slapped him hard across the face. "You really are a fool. Your children will get hurt and they will bleed, Makarov, no matter how much you try to protect them. Your stupid senile beliefs, the ones I used to follow when I was in that rundown guild, have now put your ace in jeopardy. You are so fucking infuriating, Makarov," poor Lyuzuka roared as she flung the head of her broken broom at the dwarf. She took a deep breath to calm herself and straightened her cloak. She opened the door. "Where are you going?" the master of Fairy Tail asked. She turned back to him with an icy glare that froze him in place. "I'm going to go and locate your ace. Gildarts will not come out of that fight unscathed, or alive for that matter. Those two are made SS class for a reason, Makarov. Now I will go find Gildarts, and when I get back, I expect you, you stupid human, gone and out of my house. I will heal Gildarts and will inform you of when I find him. Do I make myself clear, Makarov?" she growled. Makarov gulped. Despite being a wizard saint, Makarov knew not to trifle with an angry poor Lyuzuka, especially when she went so far as to curse him and call him stupid, senile and infuriating. Also, he knew she was right. What was he thinking sending out his top mage, an S-class, against someone that clearly had the ability to not spare a life, against someone above his ace in terms of rank and probably equal or greater in terms of power? Despite killing being illegal by the Magic Council, the two SS class, flea-on-sight criminals were not afraid of the law. The door slammed shut and Makarov looked up to see poor Lyuzuka had gone. He sighed before planting his face in his palms. "What have I done?" he thought. End flashback. Looks like Makarov was right when he told me something was about to happen to you and to look for you, Gildarts. You stupid humans always getting yourselves in trouble. Your left limbs are gone, though a piece of your left thigh is left, so your leg is not completely gone. You suffer from major blood loss, severe bone breakage, as well as internal and external body damage. Makarov would go into a fit if he saw you like this, so it would be best I fix you up before I send you over to that stupid old fool. Poor Lyuzica sighed as she bent down and draped the muscular man's right arm over her shoulder before reaching into her cloak and pulling out a small blue lacrima. Teleport, she said. A magic seal appeared beneath her and Gildarts, and in a flash of blue light, they vanished, heading for her house. Insert music. Fairy Tale Tower of Heaven. The Tower of Heaven, Fiorian Sea. Far away, miles off the coast of Fiori was a small island where construction of a mighty tower was done. The tower was large, taller than any tree or building one would find in books or in actual life. Many years of construction, steel, wood, stone and many other resources had been pooled together before becoming what it was now. The monstrosity of infrastructure that was the tower. Its spire seemed to graze the clouds, and its strong structure made it seem as if the tower would never fall, no matter what would happen. The ones who built this tower, the result of hard labor by the hands of numerous slaves, had wondered why the tower was built in the first place. What was its purpose? It was simple, really. The reason this tower came to be, this Tower of Heaven, had come into existence for one purpose and one purpose alone. To revive the Black Mage, to resurrect the descendant of Merlin, to bring back Zareth into the living plane of existence. Hence, it was dubbed another name, the R system. The outside of the tower was rather elegant looking. Many blocks of stone and cement formed its walls and tall pillars decorated its sides. A spiraling staircase of stone circled the island, which led to the large, stone staircase that led to the entrance of the Tower of Heaven. However, the inside of the tower was rather unsatisfying. Despite some of the floors looking as if they were elegant ballrooms and whatnot, there were other rooms hidden throughout the tower. These rooms hid away the slaves and the very abusive guards and their beast-like watchdogs, if you can call them dogs. Cages filled with people who had been shipped to the tower in the effort to complete the R system had been made, ranging from small children to old men. Having blindly followed the insane ramblings of a single child, those who chose to follow had been thrown back into the pits of despair where many others from the mainland had followed. However, amongst these cages, at the end of one hallway, locked behind a solid steel door, one individual was held in custody. Behind the door was a room made of steel as well, with only one single window which had a few bars and was small enough to prevent anything of human size to squeeze out. Within the steel room, bound in chains, was the individual who was held in custody of the Tower of Heaven. Upon first glance, it was obvious to tell that due to the prisoner's massive size that it was a male within the steel prison room. His body was large, pure muscle rippled beneath his skin as he breathed. Scars littered his body to the point that they were sure to never vanish from his physique. Standing at a height of approximately 7 feet, the man was called a giant by the other slaves who had the ability to see him before he was wrapped in chains. The only form of clothing he wore was a tattered pair of dark brown pants. A small metal mask covered the lower part of his face. The small beam of light that shone through the window showed the man's dark gray hair, which was long enough to extend past his shoulder blades and was rather spiky. His eyes were closed as if he were sleeping, but in actuality he was concentrating, waiting for the moment when he was going to escape this hellhole. Ever since he was captured during the early construction of the R system, he had been one of the unfortunate ones to have been held back. The other boats had exploded due to the acts of one Jelal Fernandez, who prevented him and many other slaves from escaping the island and returning to society. Forced to work due to blue-haired boy's power to kill using the dark magic he was given. He worked and he slaved. But, he continued to try and fight for freedom, and many times he was imprisoned within the very room he was in. He was tortured, whipped and beaten beyond recognition, leaving scars on his body that reminded him of the struggles he had endured. Due to his numerous attempts at escaping and fighting the guards, killing many in the process, even going so far as to bite their faces off in his race to see the light of day, he was permanently locked away within the steel room. However, his captivity had allowed him to activate a latent power within him. His eyes snapped open, revealing the shining silver irises within them. His breathing suddenly grew heavier and his muscles tensed. The steel chains that bound him beginning to rattle loudly. It is time, he thought. The prisoner had remained locked in the room for so long that he could practically feel the tower as it was being built. He felt every stone, every pillar of wood that was used for stability, every bar of iron that was used to make the slave chambers. He felt it all, and finally, he felt it. The last piece was placed. And now, he would escape. He would break through the bonds that held him and shatter the walls of the tower that denied him his freedom. His muscles tensed even more and the air within increased in density. The steel room released a small groan in reply to the powerful magic power being released by the silver-eyed prisoner. Freedom is mine. The pressure of the air that fell upon the metal chains caused them to crack, and with that, the prisoner pulled. His large, powerful muscles granted him the use of strength that bordered on superhuman. He pulled and the chains snapped as if they were made of thin strands of thread. The prisoner then yanked his feet free before tearing off the anklets and bracelets of steel that were worn on his wrists that the chains were attached to. The sound of his deep breathing was distorted slightly due to the mask he wore. But it was necessary requirement seeing as how his breathing was affected due to the magic he had discovered he could use. He stomped towards the door, his feet leaving indentations within the steel floor due to the density of his body and his sheer weight. He reached the doors and smirked beneath the mask. He clenched his right hand into a fist and using the natural superhuman strength he had, he punched the steel door. A large indentation of his fist formed as the hinges bent slightly. Another punch from his left fist made the door fold in half before a third and final punch sent the door flying, creating sparks as it skidded along the ground due to friction. The other slaves turned in shock to see the giant of a man exit his steel room. He looked at the other prisoners before closing his eyes as if he were concentrating. He held out his arms and multiple orbs formed alongside the silver magic seals that hovered in his palms. He sent the spheres of high-density air through the room before crashing them against the bars, completely destroying them. The other slaves looked at the masked slave in astonishment as he walked through the halls. "Thank you, mister." A little girl squeaked as she crawled out of her former dwelling. The dark gray-haired man chuckled beneath his mask. "Those of you who have suffered pain like I did have no reason to thank me. I, like you, have been wanting to see the light of day, to watch the expanse of blue of the sky we had once seen before that blue-haired bastard locked us away once again. His power no longer controls me and it no longer controls you. I will leave you to your own devices once I have killed the guards. Live long and prosper, my brothers and sisters." The prison said as he turned his head to face the guards he was talking about. "Hey, they are escaping. It's that giant guy. Didn't we lock him away in the steel room though?" The guards sent forth their bloodthirsty beast like pets only for the silver-eyed slave to pick up 2 rocks. He threw them rather hard and said stone embedded themselves into the red-skinned beasts, killing them. Everyone stared in shock at what the man just did. "He, KKK killed them WW with rock," a guard exclaimed. The prisoner's silver eyes narrowed as he walked towards the guards, more of which flooded the room. The prisoner held his hands up and a silver sphere formed. He sent it flying and a large boom echoed throughout the Tower of Heaven. The guards were suddenly forced into the ground as they felt as if the force of gravity increased 20-fold due to the dense air that surrounded the powerful slave's person. A side effect of the magic he used and was the reason he wore the mask, to allow himself to breathe normally in the dense air his magic created. Raising his arms over the entirety of fallen guards and their bestial pets, the prisoner muttered a single word. "Fall." Another large boom echoed throughout the tower as the density of the air increased, forcing itself down upon the bodies of the fallen guards and their pets, crushing their bones and making blood leak through their noses, mouths and eye sockets. The prisoner continued to walk through the halls of the detention level of the Tower of Heaven, killing all that came towards him. A guard managed to sneak up behind him and aimed to impale him with a sword. However, he was shocked when the entire blade cracked and shattered upon making contact with the gray-haired slave's skin. The slave turned before grabbing the guard's head before chuckling beneath his mask. "You really think a mere blade will pierce my skin? You are sadly mistaken, my good man. Now you die," he muttered darkly before crushing the man's skull. The dead body fell to the ground. Numerous mage guards appeared and fired their spells at the titan that was the slave. Lightning, wind, water, fire, earth, steel, ice, bladed weapons. All of these things and more flew towards the slave who watched the onslaught of attacks coming towards him. "Watch out!" Some slaves yelled out as they had chosen to follow this ferocious savior of theirs. The slave's silver eyes gained a brighter shine than before as he turned back slightly to look at them. "Do not doubt me, for they are weak. The weak cannot defeat me, for I am strong." The slave punched the ground and the earth itself split in half, causing the spells to miss their intended targets, while some that managed to continue their paths and strike him did nothing against the slave's powerful defense that was his armor-like skin. A few scorch marks formed from the lightning strikes and fire attacks, but nothing more. The slave dug his fingers into the ground and heaved out a large section of the floor before pelting the gargantuan stone at his enemies. They were crushed by the boulder. The slave turned and ushered his fellow slaves to the doors that allowed them to exit the R system. They all cried out with joy as they looked up at the blue sky, the white clouds, the yellow sun, and the blue waters of the ocean. The slave looked around before noticing the few boats that were used by the guards themselves when they needed to go to the mainland. The silver-eyed slave took them to the boats. The boats were all filled by the time the powerful slave himself could get on board. "We can't thank you enough," a woman said with a great big smile. "I'm sure we can make room for you. Climb in," a pair of twin girls spoke. "Can we repay you in any way?" The slave shook his head as he untied the boats before using his great strength to push them all in the direction of the mainland. "I will be fine. You all will go back to the mainland in these. I will take my own journey back to it," he stated, and with that the boats were pushed off, moving as if they were motorboats due to the force the powerful slave had applied. Once the boats were gone, the slave looked at his body before applying his magic. His body felt lighter than that of a feather's. His body's density decreasing in size, and with that the slave tentatively set his foot atop the raging currents of the Fiorian Sea. His foot made contact with the water before he placed his second foot atop it. The masked slave chuckled as he watched himself stand atop the waters. He looked at the mainland before taking off towards it, moving at a rather fast pace despite his large size in a different direction to that of the slaves he had set free. Coastline near the Wood Sea, fury after a few hours of running, showing that the slave was indeed the epitome of physical fitness. He wiped the small amount of sweat that had formed on his brow and returned his body to its original density. He soaked his body in the cool sea waters to lower his body's temperature as well as cleanse himself of what dirt and grime he could wash off. The man's long gray hair dotted the sands with salt-infused water. His audible deep breathing kept silence from ever rearing its head as he trekked along the beach and into the woods before him. He continued to walk until the sound of a snapping twig met his ears. He turned to see a lone deer cross his path, pausing as it spotted him. The gray-haired slave's stomach rumbled before the deer took off with the grace and agility only an animal such as it could possess. However, the slave suddenly fired off a sphere of dense air from his hand and struck the deer in the neck, killing it instantly.
I can't remember how long it eaten, he thought as he picked up the deer and prepared to eat it. After making a fire using the raw materials around him, cooking and eating the deer was no problem. All that was left was the skeleton and a few pieces of cooked flesh. Releasing a burp, an anime burp cloud exiting through his mask, he patted his stomach in content.
He then rose back up and prepared to trek through the woods growing far more dense, and the man's silver eyes narrowed in annoyance as he tore another tree out of his path using his immense strength. Stupid trees. There's nothing here but trees, and would you have it? More trees. He deadpanned. Where is civilization? He cried out, clutching his hair before reaching over and ripping a tree out of the ground in frustration and was about to throw it away. He blinked in confusion, however, as he heard the sound akin to voices. Human voices. He looked to see 3 figures walk out of the brush. Insert music. Fairy tale dark guild darkness. This is where the magic spike had come from. Racer spoke as he exited the brush. Angel stood beside the long-nosed man before looking around. She spotted the slave before her and flinched at his intimidating form. After all, who wouldn't be if they saw a 7-foot-tall giant of a man standing in the middle of a forest, holding a tree above his head as if it were a beach ball? Master Brain. I think we found the source of the large magic signature. Angel spoke as she pointed at the large slave. Master Brain, the leader of Orochimaru, was a dark-skinned man with black, rectangular tattoos decorated across his face. His white hair was straight, slicked back to reveal his forehead in full and reached just above his neckline.
He wore no shirt, exposing his muscular and prominent abdominal muscles. A pair of dark gray pants were tucked into a pair of dark-colored boots, most likely dark brown or black. His upper body was covered by a dark blue trench coat of some sort. In his hand was a staff with a human skull ornament atop it which clutched a green orb in its jaws. A feathery hat, akin to that which ancient Native Americans would wear, was placed atop the skull's skull.
He seems rather strange. Racer commented as he watched the 7-foot-tall man before him toss aside the tree before looking at them, licking his sharp fangs. Who are you? Brain asked. The slave's eyes narrowed at the 3 members of Orochimaru. I believe I should be asking you that. Due to his rather unsanitary condition, the 2 younger members of the Orochimaru were surprised by the man's use of speech. Well then. I believe it would be rude of me to not introduce ourselves. I am Master Brain of the guild, Orochimaru. These are my fellow guild members, Racer and Angel. He gestured to the white-haired girl and the tracksuit-clad man. We had detected a large magic signature within this vicinity, and it looks like you're the source of that magic signature. You're a rather powerful mage, Mr. Zabrak. The gray-haired man spoke. My name is Zabrak Granful.
The slave's lips formed a snarl. I see the look in your eyes. I've seen it before. You want to take me as your subordinate and use me for your own purposes. I will not bow down to anyone, not again. I will not be imprisoned. He punched the ground causing the earth to shake, surprising the 3 Orochimaru members. Using their imbalance to his advantage, he uprooted a tree and swung it towards his self-proclaimed foes.
Racer's body suddenly vanished from view as Brain shattered the large wooden weapon with a blast of dark green and black magic from his staff.
You are not fast enough to hit me. Racer spoke as he sped towards Zabrak as if he were a wild animal hunting its prey. Racer appeared in front of Zabrak and lashed out with a strong kick causing a large shockwave to form upon impact, but Racer's eyes widened as he saw that Zabrak hadn't moved a single inch from his spot. Was that supposed to be a kick? Let me show you mine. Zabrak spoke before grabbing Racer and choke-slamming him into the ground. The silver-eyed muscular man then held up Racer, his hand wrapped around his throat, before dropping him and slamming a powerful kick to Racer's stomach. The speedy Orochimaru member slammed into the ground at Brain's feet, coughing up a small amount of blood due to the internal damage. Gate of the Ram, I open thee. Ares. Angel spoke as she tucked some strands of her long white hair behind her ear. She took out the golden key which had the image of ram horns on its handle. A shine appeared from the key. Zabrak looked in surprise as an attractive young woman appeared. She was wearing a fluffy-looking white dress that ended at her mid-thigh with similarly colored boots, curly pink hair, dark eyes and a pair of brown ram horns poking through her pink locks appeared. I am here, Sumimasen. Ares said as she watched Zabrak nervously. Put him down, Ares. Angel ordered. The pink-haired celestial spirit gulped in nervousness as she looked at the towering behemoth. His silver eyes looked at her before his gaze seemed to soften slightly. You do not wish to fight. I can respect that, so I recommend you step out of my path. Zabrak spoke. Ares shook her head. My master tells me to fight, as a celestial spirit. I must obey. Wool bomb. Zabrak sighed as he watched the large cloud of pink wool shoot towards him. However, Zabrak took a deep breath and using his immense lung capacity, he released a dense bullet of air from his lungs that sent the pink wool back towards the user. Ares' eyes widened as she was sent skidding backwards by her own attack. The earth rumbled as Zabrak charged forth as if he were a juggernaut. Wool wall. Ares cried out and a wall of rose-colored wool appeared in front of Zabrak. Sumimasen. Ares watched as her opponent crashed into the soft wall of wool. His silver eyes widened as he met the soft wool and blinked in confusion. This feels nice and all, but, is this supposed to do something? Zabrak questioned, gaining a comical look of surprise from all present. He's not asleep. They all exclaimed. Angel cursed as she performed a forced closure, withdrawing Ares. Sumimasen. The ram spirit muttered before vanishing in a flash of light. Racer sped forth and began to rain down a flurry of fast blows towards Zabrak's body, but that was all they were. They are fast, but since force is applied to mass times acceleration, his punches and kicks will have no effect on me due to his low mass. He thought. Zabrak sighed as he raised a palm before gripping it tightly around Racer's wrist as a fist was aimed for his right cheek. Did you not learn from your initial strike, speed user? I cannot be hurt through mere physical blows, especially ones as weak as yours. Zabrak snarled as his grip tightened, snapping Racer's wrist. The speed magic user released a howl of pain before he slammed repeatedly into the ground. A small crater formed as a result of the numerous, powerful body slams before Racer was thrown away, smashing through a tree and indenting another. Angel pulled out another golden key. Gate of the twins, I open thee. Gemini. In a flash of golden light, the light blue-colored gremlin-like twins appeared. Gem. One twin spoke. Mini. The second one said.
The twins hopped atop one another before a puff of pink smoke formed around them. Zabrak's eyes widened as a carbon copy of himself appeared before him.
What the hell? He asked himself before Gemini sped forth and slammed a powerful punch to his stomach. Zabrak skidded backwards and rubbed his stomach. It has my strength, so it is in fact a clone of me. The slave charged towards the celestial spirit and a large shockwave formed as they clashed. Zabrak and Gemini pushed against one another before pushing back and their fists collided.
Right punch, left hook, spin kick, headbutt, roundhouse, uppercut. The physical blows all clashed against one another with even power and Zabrak was becoming very annoyed at that. He and Gemmies against one another, but to Gemini's surprise, he felt as if Zabrak's fist was getting heavier. Gem. Ini. The celestial spirit squeaked out in fear as Zabrak's killing intent and magic power washed over it. This allowed Zabrak's stronger, denser fist to impact with his clone's face, sending it spiraling through the air. He then raised his hand and the air above Gemini grew denser. Fall. He stated, and Gemini was sent back to the spirit world as the twins were crushed by the powerful force created by the increasingly dense air. Angel gulped as two of her spirits were now considered useless against the monstrosity that was Zabrak Grandfall. As Zabrak reached her position, Angel took a couple steps back, but even then she did not escape the darkness made by his looming shadow. Zabrak raised his hand and Angel flinched, only for her eyes to widen as she only lifted up off the ground. Zabrak's silver eyes studied the voluptuous body of the feathered dress wearing celestial mage. He then looked into her eyes and his gaze softened. He turned her around and peeked down the back part of her dress which covered everything below her shoulder blades. Oi, what the hell are you doing, you pervert? Angel cried out, a blush evident on her face. Zabrak didn't respond as he turned back around. Angel lashed out and slapped the larger man only for her hand to suddenly throb in pain. What is he made of? Steel, she thought as she clutched her hand. You, both of you, I presume. He looked at her. You both are from the Tower of Heaven, aren't you? Angel's eyes widened. Memories of her trapped in the prison cells, the stone walls surrounding her, her aiding to build the walls that trapped her. How did you? You saw it. Zabrak nodded before he turned around as well and pointed to the tattoo in between his shoulder blades. It seemed to be a tattoo, but it was actually a burn mark. The burn mark was a deep red and managed to stand out among the long jagged scars on Zabrak's back. It consisted of a large ring with a pair of wings on either side of it. Within the ring was the letter Z and a straight line, a pillar, running vertically through the Z. The mark of the Tower of Heaven? You're a slave too? Zabrak nodded. I have recently escaped. You are most likely one of the many who managed to escape on the day of the liberation years ago. Angel nodded before turning to her master. Brain stared at the large man before walking up to him. Angel, go and get Racer. I will speak with Zabrak Granful, Brain instructed. Angel nodded as Zabrak set her down and she ran off to get her friend and guildmate. Zabrak looked down at the shorter man. His silver eyes staring into Brain's. You have watched after these slaves, haven't you, Brain? I believe you said your name was. Brain nodded in confirmation before placing his staff on the ground. Yes. Zabrak, your life must have been dreadful. I took in a few of the slaves that managed to cross my path here. Angel and Racer are only 2 of the 5 that I had found. Join us, the Oracion sees. Be one of us and you can then make peace with your fellow slaves who sought to find freedom and found it in the form of my guild. You have nowhere else to go and it may take you days to get out of the Wood Sea before you finally find civilization. Join us, Zabrak Granful. We could use a strong mage like you. Brain spoke with a tone that would have made a crowd follow him to the ends of the earth. Zabrak's eyes narrowed. You dare take my sympathy towards my fellow slaves and try to use it against me, Brain. You are a fool to think I would fall for that, but you are correct. I do have nowhere else to go. I will follow you. Master Brain is a member of the Oracion Seas. Zabrak bent down on one knee to represent his willingness to serve. Brain grinned widely while Zabrak was gritting his teeth. I know that look. He wants to use me for his own purposes, but until I know what that is, I will have no choice but to follow him and trust him, he thought. Welcome to Oracion Seas. No wait, there are 6 of us and you will be our 7th member, ergo I would think a change of name should be in order. Zabrak titled his head in confusion at the Dark Guild Master. To what exactly? Nothing big as it is merely an increase in number, so different number to accommodate your entry in my guild. Welcome to Oracion Siete, Zabrak Granful. He gripped Zabrak's hand as they shook hands, but grunted as Zabrak's stronger grip was felt. The large man stared at his new master with a blank face. I'm keeping my eye on you. Master Eastern Mountain Range, Fury. Natsu gulped as he was currently at sword point. His mind temporarily drew a blank as it aimed to comprehend how he had gotten into this situation, but in the end it only brought up one word. Fuck, the Fire Dragonslayer thought. He gulped. The contraction and relaxation of his neck muscles caused his neck to mildly graze against the tip of the blade and the pink-haired boy could only stay perfectly still in order to prevent himself from being impaled. Who are you? The sword-holding stranger spoke. Natsu continued to stare at the hand holding the blade, fearing the user would think that making eye contact with the stranger would result in unnecessary confrontation. I'm sorry. Sir. Natsu spoke as he registered the voice that spoke was a male's voice. I was just on my way to look for my new sensei. Ji-chan told me that the guy was located here at the top of this mountain. Natsu spoke hurriedly, a show of his nervousness and fear. The man before him gave a period of silence that made the entirety of the world seem deafening to the son of Igniel. A chuckle was then released from the man's throat before he withdrew the blade, allowing Natsu to let go of the breath he had been unconsciously holding captive within his lungs. Natsu bowed to the man before him, uttering a quick thank you before standing back up.
You have the mark of fairy tale. Then you must be Natsu Dragniel, Fire Dragonslayer and son of Igniel, am I right? Natsu's eyes widened in shock as he gazed up at the man, finally getting a good look at his former attacker's form.
The man was rather tall, taller than Natsu, but a bit shorter than Laxus Drayar if a comparison were to be made for a suitable approximation of height. As a result, it placed the man at around 5 feet, 10.5 inches. However, despite his seemingly advanced age, the man had full head of solid red hair and had it tied up into a high ponytail of some sorts. A mustache and beard adorned his face and had been shown to have grown to such a degree that the beard and mustache were now connected to each other. On his face was a black piece of armor, at least that's what Natsu thought it was, that started at one cheek, across the bridge of his nose and ended at the other cheek. A brown headpiece which had a 3-pointed, crown-like ridge on its edge, was worn on the man's head and a golden ring was attached to the headpiece. The man's clothes consisted of a long-sleeved, purple shirt and pants, with mesh armor worn underneath it. A set of brown armor was also worn on the man's body. A black sheath was located at the man's left hip. The pair of stern, black eyes now gained a bit of amusement as they watched Natsu's form. Yeah, I am Natsu Dragniel. How did you know that? Natsu asked. The man chuckled as he placed his blade back into the sheath. Well, Makarov did tell me he was sending one his own for some training with me. Wait, you're the guy that's supposed to train me? The Dragonslayer asked. The man nodded and took a few steps closer to Natsu before giving the boy a small smile. My name is Roshi, Yoryu no Roshi. I am the adopted son of Volcanus the Lava Dragon and Dragonslayer of Lava. Natsu could only stare in shock at the man before him. The magic power within this man was large, yes, and as a result Natsu could tell that his new teacher would be powerful, but to find out that said man was a Dragonslayer.
SS Sugoi. He stuttered. Why you're a Dragonslayer, just like me. Natsu asked. The lava Dragonslayer nodded to his fire counterpart. Yes, and starting from this point onwards, you will be my student. Silence filled the air as Natsu still had to process the fact that another Dragonslayer stood before him. Sure, there was the assumption of the Ogano Fujin being one and that Phantom Lord had Dragonslayers, but to actually meet another one in the flesh was still a shock to the teenager. The son of Igneal's facial muscles tugged upwards as a wide grin formed on his face. I'm all fired up. When do we start? Natsu asked as his fists became engulfed in flames. Roshi chuckled at Natsu's eagerness, finding it very amusing. He ruffled the rosette's spiky hair. Soon, my disciple. Let me just allow you to view your temporary living quarters. Natsu tilted his head in confusion, watching Roshi's retreating back as the older Dragonslayer headed towards the small cluster of trees. Natsu followed after his fellow Dragonslayer, avoiding being hit by the branches and leaves Roshi had peeled back as they navigated through the foliage.
Soon, Natsu and Roshi had come across a small wooden house. Said small house was where Roshi had made his home within the mountains. The two entered and Natsu surveyed the place that he would have to temporarily call home, while he would be training in these mountainous regions. The inside of the small house was made of wood just like its exterior. Hardwood floors, wooden tables and chairs made the furniture. Of course there were a few touches of modern lifestyle mixed in with the wooden household as there was a couch bed and a single reclining leather chair which were positioned in front of a large motion viewing lacrima screen. The kitchen was rather simplistic, containing a sink, refrigerator, a small dining table and there was also a sizable washing machine and dryer. There was a single bedroom however, meaning Natsu would have to sleep on the couch bed. Said bedroom containing a single futon, a small dresser, clock and a light lacrima. The bathroom lay directly opposite to the entrance of the house. It's not very big, Natsu commented as he noticed that despite how satisfactory the size of the house looked on the outside, it appeared rather cramped on the inside. True, but that's not a problem for when one lives by themselves. Now then, let me introduce you to my rather moody companion. Son, Roshi called out. You have a son? Natsu asked as he jogged after the lava Dragonslayer. The red-haired man shook his head. No, son is a cat. Just like your companion, Happy. Roshi said. As he said that, the door of Roshi's bedroom had opened revealing a small cat. The cat yawned as it walked up to Roshi, climbing up his leg and settling atop his shoulder. Natsu tilted his head in a perplexed manner as he looked at the cat before him. It had fur the color of fire, a deep crimson, with its nose, paws, ears, pectoral and abdominal areas being a pale green. Over its body, it wore a red monkey costume that had a similar color scheme. The monkey costume had two long, golden horns on its head which curved upwards, originating from the forehead area of the costume to form a crown-like plating with dark brown or black tips. Its tail was similar to that of a monkey's and had several bone-like protrusions, probably extended tail vertebrae, sticking out of the length of the tail. Its eyes were a deep yellow with white pupils. What do you want, Roshi? The monkey costume-wearing cat asked. Roshi patted his companion on the head. Oh nothing, son. I just wanted you to meet my new pupil, the one Makarov had asked to train with me. He gestured to Natsu. Natsu, I'd like you to meet my friend, Son Goku. The monkey-costumed Exceed stared at Natsu with his golden-colored eyes, making Natsu seemingly flinch beneath his gaze due to the intensity of it all. Roshi, who is this boy? He smells similar to you. Is he a Dragonslayer as well? Son Goku asked. Roshi nodded. Yes, this is Natsu Dragneel. He is the son of the fire dragon, Igneal. The emotional hothead is what you said your dragon, Volcanus, called him. Oi, don't insult Igneal. Natsu yelled. Goku glared at Natsu before sprouting his feathery wings and grabbing Natsu by the cheeks and stretching them to their limit before letting them snap back into place. Itai? Natsu yelped in pain. Don't raise your voice in front of me, human. The only one who can do that is Roshi and even then I still hit him for doing so. The lava Dragonslayer sweat dropped. Really son, now is when you will bring up your violent teeth at that. I hate humans. It's a trait the nine of us share. He said. Roshi pinched the bridge of his nose in slight frustration before turning to Natsu. Anyway, Natsu, now that you've been acquainted with Goku here, I shall have you rest your belongings here and then we shall begin your training back in the open space where we met. Natsu nodded and he walked over to the couch bed Roshi gestured to before following the red-haired man outside of the house, Son Goku following behind in order to see what skills the fire Dragonslayer possessed. Roshi and Natsu stood within the clear, rocky area that made half of the top of the mountain that Roshi and Goku lived on. Goku floated in the air before hanging upside down on a tree branch and a bit of acrobatics here and there to cure his spells of boredom which occurred every few seconds. So, Natsu. A few rules before we begin. Yes, Roshi Oji-san? Roshi gave his pink-haired pupils a strained smile. Goku's enhanced feline hearing allowing him to hear the fire Dragonslayer's nickname for his sensei caused said monkey-dressed cat to release a bark of laughter. Roshi turned and glared at the yellow-eyed cat before turning back to Natsu with an even more intense glare. Okay, first of all, no calling me Oji-san. I know I'm old, but I don't like being reminded of it. Makarov may be able to deal with it, but I won't, understood? Natsu nodded readily, noting the burning gaze that Roshi held him under. Second rule, there will be no whining while I teach you. Makarov may be soft-hearted, but I'm not so. I will reprimand you for being soft in times where it's necessary, and I will sure as hell kick your flaming ass from here to Era if I hear one word from your mouth that includes anything to the act of giving up or stopping a training session. Natsu chuckled at that. Well, you don't have any problems there because I've been told I'm rather stubborn when in a fight. I've never run from a challenge. Roshi nodded before continuing. Thirdly, I've heard you often jump people in an effort to fight them. Stop that. If you try that on me, I will kick your ass and burn you with lava. Not necessarily in that order. And my final rule when you are training under me is... He paused, looking to see if the rosette was paying attention. Finding that Natsu was staring attentively, he continued. Fourth rule, I demand respect, so you will address me as Roshi-sensei. Understood? A nod was his response. The final rule is that you do not ever say you will try to do something. Do or do not. There is no try. Remember those words, Natsu, because they will be the foundation of your training up here for the next few months I will have you here. Natsu nodded with a determined gaze on his face before catching Roshi's last few words. His eyes widened. Wait, months? Natsu exclaimed. How long did Ji-chan agree to me being here? Roshi laughed evilly. When you leave is when you will find out how long you've been here. Roshi answered before cracking his knuckles. Now then. I will ask you to fight me. Come at me with everything you've got. Do not hold back. Yosh, I'm all fired up. The fire Dragonslayer's hands erupted into flame as he looked at his new master.
Insert music. Naruto Shippuden mid-origami. Let me see what you got, Gaki. Roshi smirked. Natsu planted his left fist against his right palm in a show of eagerness before leaping forth, fists ablaze. Karyu no Tekken. Natsu raised his right fist, bringing it down for a hammer blow, but Roshi merely sidestepped the attack. Natsu stumbled forward from the miss before twisting and going for a flying kick. Karyu no Kajutsu. The bearded man raised his hand and caught the limb before twisting it harshly, but Natsu spun with the rotation, freeing his foot. He fell to the ground, but went into a backwards roll. Once he gained some distance between himself and the lava Dragonslayer, he took a deep breath. Karyu no Hoko. Natsu roared as he released a powerful stream of raging orange-yellow flame. Roshi slipped into a stance, shifting so that he body-faced to the side, placing his right leg behind his left and spreading said legs apart equidistant from where his ankle would meet should he join them together. He bent low, facing the stream of fire, his legs tensed. As the roar of Igneel sped towards him, Roshi rotated swiftly in a full 360, raising his left leg high into the air before bringing it down in a harsh axe kick that met the fire stream. Natsu stared in shock as he saw the limb suddenly split apart his attack as if it were nothing. How did you do that? Boy, I've dealt with the temperature of lava. I eat lava, I breathe lava. Your pitiful flames aren't going to do much against me. After all, lava is a combination of fire and earth. Roshi explained. Natsu gritted his teeth in frustration before going forth with his entire body set afire. Karyu no Kenaku. The makeshift blade of flame launched itself at the lava Dragonslayer. Roshi leapt aside, but suddenly Natsu stamped his feet into the ground as soon as he missed. Pivoting with such ferocity, he tore the earth beneath him from the impact his feet made with the ground. He struck out his arms as the flames surrounded them gained the image of wings. Karyu no Yokugeki. The wings of flame slammed down on Roshi, but like the older man had stated, he had dealt with lava. Fire would do little to stop him, and as such, Roshi let loose a strong spin kick that diverted the flames. However, Natsu decided to go in for a close encounter with the man before him. A punch to the face was blocked by the bearded man's raised arm before pulling Natsu inwards with his other arm and slamming a knee to the stomach. Natsu gasped as the wind was knocked out of his lungs, and even more so as Roshi kicked him away. The fire Dragonslayer rolled on the ground, managing to right himself and go with the momentum to pull himself back to his feet. Ejecting flames from the bottom of his feet, Natsu sped forth once more with a headbutt. Roshi smirked and clashed his own forehead with Natsu's own. Deciding to take advantage of the close proximity, Natsu let loose a flaming punch to the face. The lava Dragonslayer sidestepped the blow before ducking beneath the blazing kick aimed for his neck. Natsu went with the momentum of his spin kick, shifting his balance to his other leg before letting loose a roundhouse kick. Roshi leapt backwards to dodge it and then crossed his arms in front of his chest to block the fiery leg that Natsu used to perform the straight kick. Hissing slightly due to the heat of the flames, which somehow increased as Natsu's anger and impatience from being unable to hit the man grew. Using the force of the block, Natsu went into a backhand spring, his flaming feet barely grazing the man's beard. He leapt into the air as he completed the acrobatic move before flipping to build momentum and crashed an axe kick downwards, leaving a streak of fire behind it from the speed with which he let it loose.
Roshi smirked and suddenly his leg gained an orange glow, appearing to transform into bubbling lava before it took on the image of volcanic rock. Veins of lava included. The lava-coated and fire-coated limbs, respectively, impacted with one another, causing a small shock wave and a wave of fire and lava to be released from the point of collision, burning the earth below them. Natsu grabbed his new teacher's shoulders and jumped, keeping a locked grip on the man's shoulders. He flipped over his shoulders and Roshi suddenly found himself in the air as Natsu aimed to use the momentum from his handstand flip to throw him away. However, as Roshi was in midair, with a simple shrug of shoulders, rather forceful shrug too, it broke Natsu's grip and the purple-wearing man let gravity take a hold of him and slammed down on Natsu, flooring him as his elbow made impact with the fire Dragonslayer's skull. The lava Dragonslayer got up off of Natsu and took a few steps away, a calculating look present on his face. Natsu noticed this as he was rising to his feet, albeit slowly. The pinkette thought. He shook his head to rid it of the cobwebs that had formed from the impact Roshi's elbow had made with it.
However, he suddenly found himself gripped harshly around his torso. Roshi gave a grunt of effort and Natsu suddenly found himself airborne. Roshi jumped after his student, slamming a knee to the stomach, but Natsu powered through and spun to slam a kick to the side of Roshi's head. The lava Dragonslayer raised his arm and blocked it before letting loose a straight kick to the sternum before performing a haymaker. Natsu sped towards the ground where a small dust cloud formed as he caused the earth to crack upon impact. Roshi dropped down and landed atop Natsu, resulting in the young male coughing up a small bit of blood as the older man's feet dug into his stomach. The lava Dragonslayer nodded as he got off the young mage before grabbing Natsu by his muffler and yanked him to his feet. Not bad, young fire dragon. He spoke in a tone similar to a teacher grading their student. Natsu caught onto this tone of voice and looked into the older man's eyes with a puzzled look.
Were you? Natsu coughed as he wiped the blood from the edge of his lips. Testing me? Roshi nodded in confirmation of the fire Dragonslayer's question. Yes, a test of your combat skills. Goku spoke this time as he flew over to the two Dragonslayers. The monkey costume wearing cat landed atop Roshi's shoulder and stared at Natsu with his orange eyes, their white pupils seeming to stare into his soul. Well, how did I do? He asked. The lava Dragonslayer sighed at that before he began to walk in a circle around Natsu. Goku and Roshi looked at one another as the lava Dragonslayer walked around his new apprentice. You want to talk or should I? Roshi asked. I'll tell the brat his strengths, you get his weaknesses. You never have the heart to talk down to a person, now's your chance to do so, Son replied. The red-haired man's eyes narrowed at the jab towards his seemingly soft nature, but allowed Goku to speak. The orange-eyed feline turned to the son of Igneal. Well, let us go into your positive aspects, the brother of Kurama said. First off, you are rather quick and you have an adequate amount of physical strength, thus allowing you to strike with much force when using your Dragonslayer attacks. Secondly, your ability to diversify your attacks and perform unorthodox strikes aids in catching an opponent off guard and will grant you a strike, and finally, your greatest strength is that your magic energy and physical capabilities seem to increase with emotions such as rage, frustration and determination, for example. Natsu grinned, but it dropped when Roshi spoke this time, still circling him. But, your negatives are that you are too overconfident and headstrong. You leap into battle without any kind of plan of action, hoping that your wild swings and attacks will grant you the ability to overpower your opponent. Your punches and kicks are wild and wide, giving an opponent large openings should they have the experience to take those shots. Obviously only the SS-class criminal you fought recently has been smart enough to take advantage of those aspects and beat you down. Another one of your weaknesses is that you limit yourself to a mere brawler's fighting style, lashing out with whatever works.
Thirdly, because you aim to overpower your opponents with strong arm blows, you fail to realize that your body is not fit for such a style of fighting. Your muscles are lean, not bulky, and as such you are more suited for a fighting style relating to your body's natural physiology. A fighting style where you must utilize speed, flexibility and agility and using momentum into order to add power to your blows.
Do you understand, Natsu Dragneel? The pink-haired boy stared in awe at how easily he was picked apart and only in the span of what seemed to be 2 minutes. How did you pick me apart so easily? Years of fighting tends to give one an edge, my young fairy tale mage. Now then, that will be all for today. Tomorrow, we shall begin your training.
What? But it's only around noon. Tell that to the sky and the sun. Roshi replied. Natsu looked up at the sky and saw it was still blue, but hues of red, orange and pink seemed to bleed into the expanse of blue. Huh?
I didn't know that much time passed since I came here. The dark-eyed boy commented before following Roshi and Sun back to the forest cottage. Once they reached back into the mountain home, the 2 Dragonslayers and 1 Exceed retired for the night. Natsu stared up at the ceiling as he lay on the couch bed he occupied, the ceiling fan rotating to keep the place cool, but seemed to place the young firebrand into a hypnotic trance. And then there's you. Fire Dragon. The Salamander, the son of Igneal, the Fire Dragonslayer of fairy tale. Who can barely even keep up with the other Dragonslayers. I have met those others Natsu and I have trained one of them. She is 12 years old by now, Natsu. And she has more skill and strength in her hand than the amount you hold in your entire body. Your attacks are weak, you are as slow as a tortoise, you are a disgrace to our race. Natsu Dragneel. You are a complete waste of a Dragonslayer. Naruto's words flooded the Dragonslayer's mind, his fist clenching with anger towards the blonde's gut-wrenching insults. You think that I am weak? That I am not worthy for my title as a Dragonslayer? Well then. Once this time is over, we will meet again, Ogo no Fujin. And when we do, I'll show you just how weak I really am. He shut his eyes, preparing himself for tomorrow's activities. The next day Easter Mountains, Fury Natsu and Roshi were now standing in the clearing that Roshi had made fit to call the duo's training grounds. The remains of yesterday's test fight between Roshi and Natsu were still prominent as there were a few scorch marks here and there as well as a small crater from Natsu's impact with the earth. So, Roshi Oja-san. He was suddenly interrupted when Roshi whacked him on the head. Address me by my proper title, Fire Dragon. He spoke in a stern voice. Natsu flinched at the tone. He's nothing like Ji-chan, he thought, remembering the master's kind words and calming voice when not enraged. Roshi, however, he was practically the opposite. The rules of Roshi's training then popped into the pink-haired boy's mind before nodding rapidly at the lava user. Hi, Roshi-sensei. I apologize. He bowed low to the red-haired man. The man nodded to his disciple. Understandable due to it being your first day of actual training, but do not let it happen again as you will not get away with a mere head strike this time. Natsu sweated out of the nervousness he now felt as the bearded man's dark eyes bored into him. He nodded rapidly. Yes, sensei. Roshi then observed the surroundings as if he were looking for something. He smirked as he spotted what he appeared to have been looking for and walked over to the edge of the forest and retrieved a thin, yet decently thick, piece of wood.
Sensei, why do you have that piece of wood? Natsu asked, blinking in confusion. Roshi reached into his shirt's pocket and retrieved a white cloth.
Sit, Natsu. He instructed. Natsu, still confused, did as he was told and sat cross-legged on the rocky ground. The red-haired man then tied the cloth around Natsu's eyes, confusing Natsu even more as he was now trapped in darkness. Sensei, what are you doing? He asked. Roshi made sure the blindfold was tied securely before raising the stick. Natsu noticed nothing was happening and in a matter of seconds began to just sway and hum a little song. However, as he was humming, Roshi struck. He raised the stick and swung it, striking Natsu in the head. The boy comically went flying through the air and made an amusing splat sound as he made impact with a tree. OWWWWWW. The rosette groaned as he slid down the trunk of the tree. He pulled up the blindfold and glared at the man, fists ablaze. Oi, what the hell was that for? That hurt you, Teme. Roshi grovel. Natsu, the reason I had blindfolded you and hit you was to test your sixth sense for danger as well as to test your senses as a Dragonslayer. As a Dragonslayer you have heightened senses and this one strike reveals that I have much work to do.
You flinched when I swung, but you did not react accordingly, meaning that you probably felt something coming, but you didn't know what. When facing an enemy or even when you are just sitting around doing nothing, it is always crucial for a mage to keep their guard up. The act of merely being aware of your surroundings, even when they are not in your field of vision, can mean the difference between life and death, Natsu.
Natsu swallowed the lump that formed in his throat before walking back over to the wise man. He pulled down the blindfold and sat down in front of the man, turning his back away from him as he had done before. Alright, let's go. Natsu spoke. Roshi raised the stick once more and swung, wincing slightly when Natsu went tumbling once more. Oi, Roshi, can I get a swing in too? Hitting the gaki looks like fun. Goku chuckled as he sat atop a tree branch before hanging upside down from it by his tail like a monkey. About 2 hours into the exercise for Natsu's reaction time and danger sense training, Roshi stopped. By the end of it all, Natsu was covered with bruises and had a swelled head, literally. Another 20 minutes was allowed for Natsu to heal from his injuries before Son Goku flew from his branch and rested atop Roshi's shoulder. The monkey costume-wearing cat watched as Natsu removed the ice bag from his head before resting it to the side in the bucket of ice Roshi had brought with it to keep the ice frozen in the bag. Now then, like I told you, your soon-to-be new fighting style will be based upon your nimble body nature. Your agility and speed are naturally above par and your lean figure shows it. So I will be working on enhancing your speed, agility and, like the previous exercise, your reaction time. Roshi said. Son will be the one to initiate this exercise. The orange-eyed cat nodded as he sprouted his wings and hovered in the air. Your exercise now is to avoid the rock pillars I form. Like Roshi, I too am able to create lava, but unlike him, I am able to split apart my lava affinity into its two components of fire and earth, hence why I am able to form rock pillars. My fires are not strong enough to harm you and it would be useless to use fire in this exercise of dodging as you are the fire Dragonslayer and you ingest flame. So, first I will begin this first exercise and based upon your performance, Roshi will then give you a suitable amount of weights to attack to your arms and legs to make the exercise harder. These weights will also be worn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You will not take them off and if you do, consequences will be thrust upon you. And my litter box needs cleaning sometimes. Natsu nodded swiftly, especially at the last comment.
Alright, now begin, Roshi said as he stepped off behind Goku. The orange-eyed cat dropped his wings and landed on the ground. The bipedal cat raised his leg and slammed it on the ground. Natsu's eyes widened as how swiftly the earth's spire rose up, having had to jump back to avoid being struck by its blunt edge. Don't worry, I only use the sharp earth pillars when I fight enemies, but that doesn't mean they'll hurt less. Goku commented as another spire rose up from behind the pink-haired Dragonslayer. Natsu barely managed to avoid it before he leapt and performed a cartwheel in midair. As he touched down, he went into a backhand spring and then into a roll to the left. Going into a handstand, he used his light frame and the pushing force from his arms to go into the air to avoid the pillar that formed beneath him. Son Goku stomped his feet rapidly, in an almost continuous fashion, Natsu being forced to move as fast as he could in order to avoid being hit by the earthen objects. Kuso. These guys are completely insane. He thought as he spotted the wide grin on Goku's face and the amused smirk on the Lava Dragonslayer's own. Twisting on his heel, Natsu danced around another pillar before grabbing onto it to rotate and avoid the one that appeared directly next to it. He jumped, flipped, twisted, spun and did many an acrobatic move one would not have though possible by a human being, but Natsu managed to avoid the earth pillars during the next 10 minutes of the exercise.
Natsu pushed off the side of another pillar before landing deftly on the ground, purposely falling onto his back to avoid one making contact with his chin. He then went into a backwards roll and got back up, going straight into a cartwheel to avoid the chain of earth pillars that followed him. However, he was caught off guard when a small earth pillar extended out of the one he was currently gripping, nailing him in the forehead. His disoriented state allowed Son Goku to drive a pillar into Natsu's stomach. Natsu stumbled backwards, clutching his wounded area only for his back to take a blow causing his spine to bend rather harshly. He tumbled through the air before landing directly upon a pillar that Goku called forth before he slid of the pillar and onto the flat ground. But Goku decided to have a bit more fun and had a number of small earth cylinders emerge beneath the entirety of the Fire Dragonslayer's body and had them move in random intervals, up and down. Circular imprints formed by the small cylinders of rock formed on Natsu's body before he was finally freed of the so-called exercise. How do you feel? Roshi and Goku asked. Natsu let out a weak groan of pain as his response. Roshi chuckled before throwing Natsu the ice bag from earlier. Well, it's not going to get any easier. You have 20 minutes to rest. After that is the next exercise. Natsu's only response was his eyes widening with fear. Ji-chan, what did you get me into? He thought as he slowly turned his head to look at the grinning faces of Goku and Roshi. As soon as he recovered, the teenage firebrand could only hope that whatever the next exercise was, it didn't involve him being hit around like a ragdoll or providing some sort of bodily harm to him. Alright, Natsu, now that you're better, here. Roshi reached into his pocket and took out 4 metal bracelets. What are these? Natsu asked, staring at the black bands of metal. They were much like sweatbands that people wore around their wrists and ankles, but these were made of metal. The ones designed for his arms extended to the mid-forearm and the ones for his legs went from his ankles all the way up to a few inches below the knee. Each had the kanji for gravity etched into their surfaces. Well, while you were recovering in those 20 minutes I gave you. He paused as he saw Natsu, still in pain, slowly rise to his feet. He resisted the urge to roll his eyes at how physically weak the boy was. What was Makarov teaching these kids? I went back to cottage and got these. These are the weights I am going to give you. Natsu looked confused as he slipped them on. They were very slack on his ankles and wrists, but suddenly Roshi tapped them lightly and suddenly, they shrunk and constricted, fitting around his limbs perfectly. The gravity kanji suddenly released an eerie violet glow before Natsu's arms dropped limply by his sides and his legs wobbled. He grunted with effort as he forced himself to remain upright and keep his arms up. WHWH, what did you do? He asked in alarm. These are the same weights that my Tusan and my master, Volcanus, used to train me in order to properly gain the physical capabilities to use his Dragonslayer magic. These weights have an initial weight equaling the weight of the user's body, times 2. So basically, you have 2 of you attached to each of your arms and legs. Whenever you get used to the weight you will come to me and I will have your weights will increase by double the amount you currently are wearing so that way you are constantly working your body as the muscles will break down to become stronger to better akko mass. So when I get used to this, I'll be carrying 4 times by body mass when the weights readjust, right? Exactly, and when you get used to 4, it will become times 8, then times 16 and so on and so forth. Roshi explained. Natsu nodded. So what kind of body work is this for?
Basically it's to build up your muscle strength, and when you remove the weights by the end of my training time with you, your body will feel lighter so you will be faster. Now I will give you some physical exercises to do so that you can use your new weights to their full potential. From then on, Natsu had to do 200 push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks and squats, each. The days flew by, and within the next 6 days, Natsu had finally gotten used to the weights attached to his body. Roshi had also added basic punching and kicking drilled to the boy's physical regimen. Roshi looked across the landscape from atop the mountain he called his home, Goku sitting atop his head. "So son, how do you think my disciple is faring for his first day?" he asked. The spine-tailed feline looked over to see Natsu had been doing his punching and kick drills he was assigned to do, but he fell once the weights caused him to go off balance. Goku's sweat dropped at the action before turning to the Lava Dragonslayer. "He is rather determined, he has the drive and the fire, and I don't mean that literally. He could be a great mage, but we all know that even though he will grow stronger from this training with us, he will still have much to learn before he can become the Dragonslayer he could truly become. Not many have the potential like he does." Goku commented. "Why? I was just curious of your opinion, and I agree. Natsu is too young, and his parent dragon no doubt never completed Natsu's training. So will you take it upon yourself to complete it?" "I will, but I cannot teach him everything. The move set of each Dragonslayer is unique in their own ways, and Natsu's childish nature is a hindrance to his growth. Makarov has been treating these mages in his guild like children for far too long, and I can't help but think the Ogano Fujin was right in the words he told them, if what Makarov told me was true. A mage cannot go through their lives without having killed someone. It's unheard of in the law by the Magic Council, which bans killing other mages, even dark mages, is merely an act to delay the inevitable." Roshi sighed. "I have a lot to do with this one," he muttered as he and Goku saw Natsu just finish his drills. The red-haired man called over Natsu. Stretching out his muscles, Natsu lazily headed over to his master. "Yes, Roshi-sensei. You should be used to the added weight by now, right?" Natsu flexed his arms and legs and jumped and down a few times. "Yeah, I guess." Roshi tapped the weights upon hearing Natsu's answer, and the pinket fell flat on the ground, a small crack forming beneath each weighted limb. "Damn, this shit is heavy," Natsu muttered as he shakily climbed back to his feet, hunched over, but still on his feet. "Well, that's good. It's nearly dinner time, Natsu, so here's the thing." Natsu looked up at his master only to suddenly see the man move out of the way as the pink-haired Dragonslayer was shoved forward and over the edge of the mountain. Natsu's increased mass accelerated his descent, and if it weren't for a quick Karyu no Hoko that cushioned the impact, he would have seriously hurt himself. "Oh, Roshi-sensei. What the fuck was that for?" he roared in anger as he looked up. The man's reply was a bit soft due to the distance between the two Dragonslayers, but Natsu heard him. "If you want dinner, climb back up. If you can't make it back, then you get no food." Natsu's eyes widened as he could practically hear the laughter of the Lava Dragonslayer's exceed partner. On second thought, scratch that. He could literally hear the monkey costume wearing feline's laughter. Natsu looked up at the sky, the clouds floating lazily through the air.
"Kuso." He cursed before shakily climbing to his feet and dug his flame-encased fists into the rocky mountain wall. "I will get my food." The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. And in Natsu's case, the motivation to climb back up lay in his need for sustenance.
Natsu's eyes widened as his arms and legs wobbled and his weakened body, due to all the physical exercises prior to his having to reclimb the mountain, in addition to the fact that his flame-encased limbs were no longer gripping the mountain, resulted in the boy falling back to ground zero. Kusu. Though. This might take a while. 1 week later, Eastern Mountain, Fury. Natsu grumbled as he unwound his bandages. The result of his climbing back up the mountain had been tedious, and that was just an understatement. His continuous falls from varying heights resulted in numerous bones breaking and his body being bruised, making it seem as if he had transformed into a humanoid, darker version of Happy due to the bruises turning his skin black and blue. However, he refused to give up, and after many hours of having his weighted body climb the mountain, he managed to return to its summit. Trudging back to the house, he had found that Roshi and Goku had fallen asleep for the night and would not doubt kick the shit out of his already battered body if he dared to wake them up and give them a rant that would make Naruto's friend, Sakura, red with jealousy. The wise Lava Dragonslayer then found his pupil the next morning and had him bandaged up, and found that Natsu's injuries would leave him with 1 week's time to recover. Once the required time had passed, Natsu was fully healed and ready for training once more, though of course during the time of healing Roshi hadn't let up with training, no matter what the form. He had Natsu read some books focusing on human anatomy, fighting styles, and also a book on the supposed history of fire. Seeing as how he had nothing to do during that time, he had succumbed to the chore of reading and actually found the books quite interesting. "So, you're finally healed, are you?" Son Goku chuckled. "You and Roshi-sensei are evil people." Natsu shot an icy glare at the orange-eyed cat. The cat's white pupils seemed to shine with the orange irises in a manner that showed how amused he was. Well, before you go out to meet Roshi and give him a piece of your mind, did you read the books I had suggested Roshi give you to read? Sun asked. The fire Dragonslayer continued to remove his bandages, pausing as he gave the Exceed a puzzled look before continuing. Well, I finished the one on the history of fire as well as the one on the fighting styles, but the anatomy book. I read about 10 chapters just to see what it was about since it seemed a bit interesting, but it was still quite boring in the end. Tossed it aside because of how boring it was. Natsu replied before tilting his head at the cat. Why do you ask? Because your next training exercises will focus on the development of your own unique fighting style, and if you wish to excel further in training to increase your skills with the fighting style we plan for you to create, I suggest you finish that anatomy book, but you will do that at a later time. Come, Natsu. Son Goku said before leading Natsu outside of the cottage. They walked through the woods before coming to a stop in the rocky clearing that was the Fairy Tail Mage's training grounds. The salamander of Fairy Tail glanced around before his ears twitched. He ducked beneath a blow to his head before twisting to the side to avoid the strike to his legs, but a third strike to his ribs sent him flying into a tree, the very same tree he had hit on his first day of training. Well, your ears are getting better, but you'd still need some work. Roshi commented as he rested the large wooden shaft on his shoulder. Natsu removed himself from the tree before rubbing his pained side. Evil bastard. He muttered as he walked back to Roshi. Now what is it you want me to learn? He asked. Natsu, you have barely learned anything from me, and all you haves in your weights as well as a strengthening of your body. I ask you, Natsu, do you feel stronger? He asked. The fire Dragonslayer looked at his fellow Dragonslayer before looking over himself. Am I stronger despite it only being 2 weeks? He thought. Natsu firmly faced his master and nodded. I do, but at the same time, I don't. As you said, I have barely learned anything, and until I learn how to properly fight and use my magic, I cannot truly say that I have gotten stronger. Roshi and Goku gave smiles of approval at Natsu's answer. An excellent answer, my young Dragonslayer. Now the first part of your training will be for you to gain further growth in your fire-using skills. Natsu raised an eyebrow at that. What do you mean? Igneel taught me everything about fire and how to use it. He told me I had complete mastery over fire before he had to leave. Son Goku took a few steps in front of Roshi and held up a paw. Natsu gazed at it before his eyes widened when he saw the bluish-green flames burst to life in the feline's paw. Son Goku then hurled the fireball at the boy, and Natsu didn't even flinch as he simply ate it, but as he finished doing so, another spheroid of burning oxygen streaked towards him. Natsu raised his arms quickly and blocked the attack, and due to receiving the scales of a fire dragon, Natsu's skin was not harmed in the slightest. That didn't do anything. What was that for? If you truly mastered fire, you would not have had to block it no matter how fast it was coming at you. By learning to understand fire and to make fire become you, you will be able to have it obey your will through your magic. So you're saying, I can control fire, even someone else's? He asked. Goku and Roshi nodded. That's precisely what we're saying. Now first, you will need to calm your spirit. Natsu sat per his master's instruction, remaining very still. Now Natsu, remember that fire is not like most elements. Water is calm and flowing, wind is silent and gentle, earth is solid and stern, lightning is fast and precise, but fire is a very powerful element of nature. Fire is the element of power. It is alive. It breathes, it moves, it makes its own path, but it also makes its own choices. It can choose whether to be wild and destructive, or it can choose to be soft and warm. Natsu listened intently as he closed his eyes, focusing on his master's words. Remember, fire mages use their emotions in conjunction with magic energy to generate the flames they wish to wield. As you may have noticed before, sometimes your flames and strength will grow in strength and intensity when you have heightened emotions such as determination, anger, frustration, the will to protect. These are some of the few sources of fire creation in mages. Now to augment your flames, breathe. Natsu took a deep breath through his nostrils before exhaling through his mouth. He continued this for a while, and Roshi smirked as he saw the air around Natsu began to ripple from the great amounts of heat being generated from his body. A red-orange magic seal then formed beneath him as Natsu calmly continued to breathe, and a gentle ring of fire formed around him. It rose with his inhalations and fell with his exhalations. Good, good. You must keep a level head when utilizing fire at times, otherwise it can act like a double-edged sword and turn against you. Though you are immune to fire, fire may not always be willing to aid you should you lose your concentration on its usage. Remember, Natsu, though fire is an element that grants strength to many users, if you do not have the correct skill and prowess to utilize it, you will fall. Natsu continued to breathe. In and out. In and out. Roshi and Goku were pleased with the boy's natural talent for using fire, but suddenly Natsu gained a strained look. Roshi and Son Goku watched in awe as Natsu's flames rose and fell, fluctuating rapidly despite the boy's slow, but now quickening, rate of breathing. Suddenly, a pulse of fire magic surrounded the pink-haired Dragonslayer, and to their surprise, Natsu's flames changed. Hotter and brighter, the flames flickered from orange-yellow to a dark blue and white. Roshi and Goku quickly got out of their shock when they saw the flames were now beginning to lash out at everything. Natsu, stop. Roshi roared. Focus. Son Goku yelled. Natsu's eyes snapped open and the magic seal vanished along with the flames and the boy's concentration was broken. The blue and white flames had reverted to their original color before vanishing into embers as Natsu's magic energy stopped providing energy for the flames. Roshi-sensei, what just happened? I lost control and I tried to get it back, but my magic wouldn't respond and it kept getting more and more out of control. Natsu explained. Roshi rested his hand on the boy's head. It's alright Natsu. No one got hurt, but it seems that you have something special about you. Your flames are very different it seems. I will look into it as we continue training, but for now let's move away from your fire magic and focus now on teaching you how to fight with your fists. Magic will not always be on your side, so it would be best for you to learn to combat opponents without magic. You cannot rely too heavily on magic. Natsu nodded. Yes, Roshi-sensei. Roshi gave his student a worried glance as he saw Natsu struggle to get up. At first, Roshi thought it was the gravity seal-infused weights the boy was wearing, but when the young Dragonslayer suddenly stumbled over and fell, the lava Dragonslayer in monkey costume wearing Exceed rushed to the boy's side. Roshi placed the back of his hand against Natsu's forehead upon seeing the teenager's flushed cheeks. He has a high fever. Goku quick, back to the house. Roshi ordered. The two rushed back to Roshi's and Goku's home before resting Natsu on the couch bed and taking numerous ice bags from the fridge which had been required since Natsu's incident of climbing back up the mountain 1 week ago and resting them over Natsu's body. He took a thermometer from the bathroom and placed it in Natsu's mouth and frowned deeply when he checked it. 103, he's running a very high fever. After a few minutes, in which the ice bags had all the ice in the melt, Roshi noticed the boy's fever was still very high and filled the bathroom's bathtub with ice water. He undressed the boy and dropped him into the tub and sighed with slight relief as he noticed the boy's temperature beginning to drop as he saw the noticeable decrease in temperature from Natsu's thermometer. Looks like things have just begun to get a little more interesting with Natsu around. The Exceed thought as his monkey-like tail swished back and forth, but frowned slightly as his gaze focused on Natsu's slightly shivering form. I'll have to keep an eye on this one. A fire dragon slayer that can use blue flames is unheard of as only pure-blooded dragons can utilize that level of intensity. Just what are you? Natsu Dragneel. Northern Mountain Range. Icy peaks, fury. The icy winds howled through the air. Snow and ice tumbled and twisted as they battered the mountains of the northern Furian region. A pack of white wolves stood from atop their perches, their golden eyes scanning the tundra, focusing on the single figure that trudged through the cold. Wearing nothing but a pair of black pants and brown boots and a backpack slung over his shoulders, the lone figure crunched the snow beneath his feet. His black hair became ruffled by the whipping winds, but though he lacked a shirt, he seemed unaffected by the cold. Gray Fullbuster smiled to himself as he paused to observe the landscape. It's been a while since I've come back to this place. Really beat me and Leon into the mountains with her training. He said with a glimmer of nostalgia in his eyes. He then shook his head before continuing to head up the mountain landscape and navigated through the blinding blizzard of the upper regions of the mountain as if he knew it like the back of his hand. Turning to the left, Gray smirked as he spotted a cave. Ah, there it is. He said as he walked towards the cave. He entered the darkness that the cave had within it and rested his backpack in an area near the entrance. He reached into his backpack and took out a fire lacrima. He rested it on the ground and pumped a small bit of magic into it. The fire lacrima reacted and the magic energy flowed into the core of the lacrima, an orange-yellow light bursting out of the orb and granted gray light within the darkness. It's the same as I remember it. He muttered, spying a small carving on the walls. The names, Gray, Leon, and Yugito, were etched into the rocky wall and Gray frowned. Yugito. Leon, I wonder what you're up to. He thought before rising from the ground. He cut the flow of magic to the lacrima and its flames vanished with a flicker. He stretched his limbs and a serious look formed on his face. I have no time to worry about memories or sentiment. I need to start training. Training hard or else I'll never be able to face that blonde bastard and shove an icicle up his ass. Gray said to himself before venturing out into the blizzard. He walked a few meters away from the cave that he would make his home for the entirety of his time in these mountains during his training and he placed his right fist against his left palm. Frost flowed from the point of contact and an ice-blue magic seal formed as he slammed his hands on the ground. Ice make. Ice wall. The snow below him began to rumble before numerous ice walls formed around him and suddenly, he was trapped within a perimeter of his own creation. Right, now no animals like those wolves I saw, will disturb me. The black-haired teen said before holding out his hands once more. The frost bleeding through the spaces in his fingers where his fist and palm made contact. Now let's see, I've pretty much mastered my static ice make, but said I should try to diversify my repertoire and learn dynamic ice make. So, I'll start with that and see where it goes from there. Ice make. Snow tiger. He yelled as he slammed his hands on the ground. Ice rose up from the ground, taking the shape of the animal he called out. Within the ice make seal, something appeared to be forcing its way through. Slowly, a muzzle emerged, sharp teeth filling the jaws that followed it. The muzzle was attached to the face of the large snow tiger that climbed out of the ice blue magic seal. Its frontal limbs emerged and it pushed its way out of the seal and stood before Gray. The majesty of the beast could put many to shame. With a roar, the snow tiger emerged completely, standing before its creator. Yada! I did it! He cried with glee, but he was in shock when a crack suddenly appeared on the creature. The crystalline animal suddenly released numerous cracking sounds before shattering like glass. Just as quickly as it came, it vanished. Gray gritted his teeth at that. Damn it. This is why I never used dynamic before. They always crumble before I'm able to make them do anything useful and they come out too slowly. Gray cursed before performing it once more. The snow tiger roared as life was breathed into its form. It took one step forward and it fell into the snow as mere ice shards. Gray tried again and again, but though he managed to make the animalistic ice make spells at a much faster pace, though nothing like what Leon or were capable of, he was unable to make his dynamic creations last for more than a few seconds. The stripper of a fairy tale mage stood back up to his feet, having sat down to allow his magic pools to refill.
Damn it, why can't I get it right? For hours, Gray continued to try and improve his less preferable form of ice make magic, but it refused to bend to his will.
He formed the animals within a matter of seconds now, but it was still too slow a rate for Gray, for his enemies would have used the time it took for him to form them and struck. Plus, due to his lack of control over his magic reserves when performing dynamic ice make, he often felt drained after a few. He sighed in frustration before turning around and snapped his fingers. The ice walls that marked his training area shattered apart at his mere thoughts before he trekked back to the cave. I'll try again, and again and again, until I'm able to get it down perfectly. Like hell, I'm going to end up weaker than Natsu if he gets stronger than me during this training trip. 1 month later. The ice make mage of fairy tale panted, shaking his head to rid himself of the dizziness he was currently feeling from the few hours of constant training he had just done. Remnants of animals made entirely of ice littered the snow-covered ground. Eagles, snakes, tigers, horses, wolves, even what looked like a deformed dragon was found among the icy rubble. Over the past month, Gray had been constantly in the field, only taking the time off to sleep and eat as well as survive. The last reason being the cause of the scars that now littered his back, chest and 1 or 2 on his arms. In order to eat, Gray had taken it upon himself to gather food by climbing the mountainous regions. He found many sources such as mountain goats, Arctic foxes, the snow rabbits, and he ever went so far as to have to take down a few vulcans. Though, the vulcans and foxes were not the causes for his scars. The causes were the packs of snow wolves that constantly surveyed Gray whenever he was training at the base of the mountain. Every time Gray went to gain food, he would be attacked by the pack. He underestimated his opponents and he paid the price by getting many a bite and slash from the white wolves. 5 sets of slashes marred his back, 2 bites, 1 on each shoulder, and 1 lengthy slash that extended from his left pectoral to his right stomach were left as a reminder to not underestimate an intelligent pack of canines. These snow wolves were some of the most intelligent creatures and they had the strength to go with their brains. Due to years of having been hunted by numerous predators, these snow wolves adapted to increasing their mental capacity and thus became smart enough to devise strategies to take down their prey. I need to work on my magic reserves and control how much I put into each spell. Gray looked up at the sky, the blizzard having calmed down and allowing him to stare at the gray cloud-covered skies of the icy peaks. So much time I have spent in fairy tale and I realized that I actually never really trained that much once we became known as the #1 guild in Fury. It's weird how the bad guys can open your eyes for you. The image of Naruto and Kurama formed in his mind's eye. A washed-up ice make mage who has a tendency to strip his clothes. That was what he was described as by the most wanted criminals in Fury. The blonde Dragonslayer had made his point very clear when they had been defeated. If you want to really be known as the strongest team in fairy tale, then get stronger. Start taking your training serious and maybe if you actually talk seriously instead of fooling around in that little clubhouse you call a guild, you'll be able to actually get somewhere in your pathetic lives. He hated to admit it, but the Ogano Fujin had been right on all counts. They really hadn't been taking their training very seriously and they paid the price and suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the blonde wind mage. We really are weak, he said to himself as he looked at the scattered shards of broken snow tigers. But I refuse to quit. I will grow stronger on my own. I don't need her to hold my hand anymore and I will see the others again. Gray's eyes burned with determination and he slammed his hands on the ground. I refuse to be weak. Ice make, snow tiger. The great feline of ice roared as it formed within a matter of 2 seconds and it looked into the eyes of its creator. The great beast leapt into the air before slamming down into the snow-covered ground, a few cracks forming on its figure, but it remained steady. Gray's progress was slow, but steady. It was better to make little than none at all after all, but he needed to become stronger. An improved ice make style is not going to help much. I need techniques and powers that will allow me to overcome any opponent. he thought as he made an eagle out of the ice. The bird of prey soared through the air at breakneck speeds before vanishing into shards as Gray called upon the formation of a wolf. He heightened his focus and pumped more magic into the spell, and suddenly he had a pack of 5 wolves standing before him ready to follow his commands. Gray nodded in satisfaction and he let the walls that surrounded his training area shatter apart along with the wolf pack he made. He then turned around and looked at the mountain he made his temporary home in. Above him, the golden eyes of the wolf pack from his arrival watched him with interest, only for it to morph into hunger. There was not much to eat in the icy tundra but snow rabbits and arctic foxes after all. Yes, I need more power, he thought as he watched the wolves tense their muscles before leaping at him, surrounding him in a circle. Their padded feet made nearly inaudible noises as the shirtless ice mage glanced out of his peripheral vision at the canines. 5, 7, 9, 12. 12 wolves and one of me. Gray smirked as he got into the position to use his magic. I like those odds, he said to himself. Considering I've always fought Natsu, I think it'll be a nice change of pace to fight someone who actually has a brain. Gray chuckled before calling upon 2 ice blades. Insert music. Fairy Tale Gray's theme. Ice make. Sword. The twin, ice blue swords were clutched tightly in his grip. He twisted them expertly, turning his body every once in a while to keep all the circling wolves within his sights. With a low growl, the wolves suddenly stopped circling and then, they struck.
One wolf leapt forward with the grace and power one could only find in these powerful canines. Teeth bared and eyes filled with mad lust for blood and flesh, the white wolf opened its jaws, aiming to clamp down on Gray's shoulder.
So they know that my arms are going to be their problems and will stop me from using my swords. Gray thought as he sidestepped the attack and then kicked the wolf, sending it into the snow. Smart, he thought as he ducked under a second wolf before rolling aside to dodge the third. He stabbed his ice blades into the ground and used them as anchors and then used his upper body strength to go into a makeshift handstand and kicked one wolf in the muzzle as it tried to bite him. The 5th and 6th wolves aimed for a double team strike and struck from the front and behind as Gray landed on his feet in the snow. The black eye surveyed his options within a split second and he sighed. He yanked his blades out of the ground and held his arms straight outwards before spinning rapidly. The wolves released yelps of pain and the white snow became dyed with crimson. The wolves now bore matching lines of crimson on their chests, the pools of crimson growing darker and larger beneath their damaged forms. A magic seal then formed beneath them as Gray slammed his foot on the ground. Ice make. Spikes. 2 large spikes suddenly rose up from the snow and impaled both wolves through their chests and ultimately killed them. Their eyes becoming as blank as a sheet of paper. We mages cannot live the lives we live without killing. Gray thought and let out a dry chuckle. God, I hate it when the bad guy gets it right. Twisting his blades in his hands, Gray stabbed them backwards and impaled 2 wolves that tried to attack him from behind, but his arrogance got the better of him and suddenly the snow beneath him exploded outwards. Blinded, Gray stumbled backwards and he suddenly felt white-hot pain go through his arms and his left leg. Using the snow to their advantage, the wolves had dug into the snow, creating tunnels beneath Gray's feet in order to perform the sneak attack. Ah! The teenager screamed as he felt the teeth dig into his flesh. He then looked to see the wolves begin to bite down harder and their white furred muzzles were dyed red by his blood. However, suddenly the blood seemed to lose its red color, turning into liquid water. The wolves were caught off guard as Gray began to laugh as his flesh and body became a shade of blue, becoming harder and more crystalline in appearance. Ice make. Ice dummy. The clone announced before shattering apart and the wolves had their own tactic of gaining the element of surprise, turn on them. Ice make. Eagle. A flurry of eagles the size of Dobermans screeched through the air and stabbed their cold beaks into the 3 wolves. After the eagles, 5 boa constrictors suddenly formed out of nowhere and bound their limbs before extending to their necks and began to squeeze. The wolves howled loudly, their howls getting softer as the boa constrictors squeezed harder. The product of Gray's improved dynamic ice make magic earned him the satisfying snapping sound of the wolves' necks being snapped. With that, Gray climbed out of the snow and swept the solid water molecules off of his body. The remaining 5 wolves howled to the skies before leering at Gray. The black-haired mage then watched all 5 jump at him, hoping for a desperation strike by overwhelming him with numbers seeing as their strategies were being countered. I've been attacked by you wolves for the past month. I know all your strategies, I know your strengths, I know your weaknesses.
And I know that you're desperate, Gray said as he went into a handstand and spun rapidly on his hands.
A twister of kicks lashed out at the wolves and knocked them back, but Gray bent his arms as soon as he sent them back. He pushed off of the snow and latched onto one of the wolves and grabbed it by the jaws, slamming it into the snow, and with a loud cry, he ripped the jaws open and continued to bend them back until a crack was heard. He overextended the jaw muscles of the wolves and snapped them apart before punching the wolf in the throat and snapping the windpipe, blood leaking from the damaged canine's jaws. He stood up before twisting and slamming a brutal roundhouse kick to the second of the remaining 5 wolves. As the wolf rolled on the ground, it surprisingly went with the momentum to leap back at him. Gray ducked, and as soon as the wolf cleared his vision, the third wolf had used its companion as a diversion to strike from above, aiming for Gray's throat. Without even a gesture from his hands, a testament to how much he had improved in his static ice make magic, a magic seal formed above the wolf. Water molecules in the air condensed and cooled to the temperature of ice. Ice make hammer. The hammer swung its form and crashed into the wolf's body, crushed its ribs and puncturing a lung before it was sent hurtling into the side of the mountain with terrific force. Now let's see if I can finally get this one down. I may not be able to do it as well as Leon, but... The three remaining wolves leapt at Gray. He smirked before slamming his hands on the ground. The snow rumbled as an ice blue magic seal flashed into existence. Ice make snow dragon. Within the span of 1.5 seconds, the large serpentine form of the frozen reptile burst forth from the snow and roared to identify all of its existence. The dragon coiled around Gray in a protective manner before opening its jaws and charging at the wolves. The roar of the mighty ice reptile echoed through the air. The dragon scooped up a mountain of snow, wolves and all, before rearing back and slamming into the ground, right at the base of the mountain. The ice dragon shattered like glass upon contact, but the wolves were now nothing more than stains of red buried beneath the snow and ice.
Gray panted as he watched his ice dragon's resting place.
Again, I let out too much magic. I still need to work on controlling how much magic I use. The speed of formation has improved, but still I use too much or too little depending on the spell. Gray said to himself. He then walked towards two of the dead wolves and picked them up. But at least I got dinner out of this. However, as Gray was about to head back to his little hidey hole in the mountain face, a loud rumble echoed through the air. The black-haired mage looked up as he saw a large shadow start to extend its way over to him. His dark eyes widened as he saw the large amount of snow descend along the length of the mountain slope, its thunderous roar making it seem like a beast on a rampage. Gray threw aside his wolves and saw the avalanche was moving too fast for him to make it to his cave, and he took the only other option he had left. He ran. He quickly formed a snowboard out of ice and took off through the snowy mountain range, the avalanche hot on his trail. He swerved around every snow mound, tree root and upright tree that aimed to block his path, but his luck eventually ran out as the avalanche's pace picked up upon Gray, meeting another steep slope. However, a large boulder that had hidden itself amongst the snow became Gray's worst enemy, and Gray ended up losing his momentum against the rough surface and he fell from his ice snowboard. Gray rolled and twisted before crossing his arms in front of him, and with a mere thought, no application of fist and hand being brought together, an ice wall erected itself in front of the young fairy tale mage. The avalanche sped towards the wall and began to divert itself around the structure, but though Gray was strong, there was no way for him to match the force of over 300,000 cubic meters of snow that moved at the speed of 100 kilometers an hour under the force of gravity. Gray watched as snow continued to batter his ice wall, and finally, with a resounding crash that resembled the sound of glass shattering, the snow broke through. The student of could only watch in horror as the shadow of the wave of snow completely encompassed him. White flooded his vision before he saw black.
Insert music. Fairy tale Tower of Heaven. Would see. Fury unknown location. Brain sat upon his throne, tapping his skull-topped staff upon the ground. The sound of heavy footsteps thundered across the cave base's floor, echoing off the walls from every possible angle. From the shadows emerged the titan that had escaped from Hell's jaws.
Ah, Zabrak, welcome back. The silver-eyed man merely nodded in response. I see you took my advice and changed your wardrobe. Those rags you wore from our first encounter did not seem suited for one as powerful as you. I will admit, Master, that those rags from my time in the Tower of Heaven did little to hide my decency. These articles of clothing seem much more suited to me. Your associate angel has good taste, it would seem. Zabrak replied as he looked over his outfit. Zabrak, no longer clothed in the brown rags from his time in the hellhole for humanity, was now properly clothed. He wore no shirt, thus allowing his muscular upper body, scar tissue and all, to be revealed. However, despite not wearing a shirt, Zabrak had been advised to wear something over his upper body, and so he went with a black and silver, fur-collared trench coat. The coat had long sleeves that, due to his large frame, seemed to cling to his body like a second skin, accentuating his muscles and their lines of definition. The coat extended to his calves so it hung a few inches off the ground. He also wore a pair of black cargo pants and black combat boots. A silver chain with a charm made into the symbol of Oracion Siete hung around his neck. Brushing a hand through his gray locks, Zabrak looked back at the man he called his master. So what have you called me for? The larger man asked. The tattooed dark guild leader dropped the mirthful look from his face and a serious one replaced it. Zabrak, it has been several weeks since you escaped the Tower of Heaven and I allowed you to join my ranks. I'd say about 2 to 3 weeks, approximately 1 month for the most. Zabrak estimated. Yes, so out of respect for you and for your fellow members. They are not my members. They were molded in the darkness along with me, they are my brothers and sisters in arms, master. I suggest you address them as such. His heavy breathing seeped through the face mask he wore as he took deep breaths to accommodate for the side effect of his density magic, that is, causing the air around his body to become so dense that only he could survive by breathing so heavily. Very well. Your brothers and sister, as you have just mentioned, had taken time within the Tower of Heaven, and out of the respect I have for the 6 of you, I refuse to bring it up. Though, I must ask you to tell me something specific about the man who ran the facility known as the R system, the true name for the Tower of Heaven. Jelal is his name, correct? Correct, Master. Jelal. He spoke the name with such venom, Brain had second thoughts about bringing up the man. He watched Zabrak use his seemingly natural superhuman strength and punch a hole into the rocky wall of their headquarters. I will forever hate the man for trapping me within that place. Your anger is understandable, however I need you to tell me about Jelal. Tell me, did he ever mention something about an ancient magic? Zabrak raised a curious eyebrow at the older man. An ancient magic, you say? Zabrak asked. Brain nodded as he tapped his staff on the ground again. Zabrak thought for a moment before shaking his head. No, not that I recall. For many a year I had been merely imprisoned within the holding cell prior to my escape. Though, I do remember in my earlier days within the tower when Jelal took over as its overseer how he mentioned something about a man by the name of Zirf. He spoke of the man in a very high regard. Do you think this Zirf is related to your ancient magic? Brain's fingers left his staff, allowing it to rest against his leg as he drummed the fingers on the armrests of his throne. The ancient magic that I speak of, its name is Nirvana. It dates back to the time of the man Jelal speaks of, Zirf. However, from your speech I doubt you have any clue as to who Zirf and to what Nirvana would be.
I'm afraid not, Master. Zabrak shook his head.
Well Zabrak, though your information has given me a slightly larger grasp on the thought process of your former jailer, it does not help.
Understandable. I shall take my leave then. The former slave turned his back on the man and was about to exit the master's quarters of the Dark Guild only for said master to call him back.
Actually, Zabrak, I have a task for you. Zabrak turned his head slightly, allowing his silver eyes to glance back at the black-eyed man. Do you now? Brain ignored the fact that Zabrak had the ability to switch between respectful and disrespectful on the dime whenever he was asked to do something.
Yes, I do. You see, my young Zabrak. I have just been informed that another member of the Balam Alliance, Tartaros, is requesting a visit from myself due to your addition to my guild. Hades and his new members will also be asked to see you as well as Hades' new recruits so as to judge your skills and see if whether or not you will be helpful to the cause of the Balam Alliance.
So you wish for me to be your trophy to show off? I assure you, Master, that my power is not to be trifled with. You speak to me as if I am weak. I was not insinuating such a thing. Zabrak chuckled at the response. That's good, Master. Brain blinked and suddenly there was a loud crash as Zabrak landed in the older man's face. His silver eyes boring into Brain's black ones. Because if you did, I will make it very clear to you right now. Do not make the mistake of having such an assumption. The darkness of enduring a life within the Tower of Heaven has made me stronger than many a mage. I would go so far as to say I am more powerful than you.
Is that a challenge, Zabrak? Brain said as he rose to his feet, staring up at the taller man. Despite Brain's impressive height of 6 feet, Zabrak towered over him at a staggering 7 feet tall. Zabrak's breathing suddenly became short and quick as the silver-haired male laughed.
A challenge. I would not waste time or energy to challenge someone such as yourself, Master Brain. My service to you is merely to satisfy the agreement we made. You provide me with resources to survive and I loan you my strength in return, though I must admit that watching after my fellow slaves does lessen the contempt I feel towards you. You feel contempt for me? Why? Brain asked. I know you're kind, Brain. He spoke, ignoring the Master part of Brain's title. I know you're kind all too well. 20 years, Brain. For 20 years I have known that kind of look you have in your eyes. I am not your puppet, merely an associate. You see me as if I am expendable, do you not? You are a valid asset, Zabrak, otherwise I would have placed you among the smaller guilds under my chain of command should you have been a liability. An asset am I. As much as joy fills my heart from hearing such words from you, they will not sway me. Know this and know it well, my master. Zabrak leaned in closer to Brain, his heavy breathing causing Brain to squint from the wind generated by it. Know that if it comes to the point where you find me expendable, I will show you the consequences of thinking such a thing should it ever come to that. Silence filled the area as Zabrak and Brain stared at each other, the only sound being Zabrak's heavy breathing. Now then, when is this meeting? Where is it? How do we get there? Zabrak asked in rapid succession, rearing up to his full height once more. It will take place later today. Tartaros has come to conclusion that giving the 2 weeks time before calling this meeting was to merely allow for easy assimilation into the Balam Alliance guilds. It will be held at Tartaros's guild house, though this may be for security reasons as they themselves had called the meeting. We will get there by having Hades come to pick us up in his airship. This will reduce time for the Balam Alliance trio to meet as it will waste less time waiting for one or the other to reach.
Will any of my siblings be accompanying me? Brain nodded.
All of you shall be coming, but the reason for my asking of you is because of your current show of rebellion. You are very volatile, Zabrak, and prone to speaking out against me. I wanted to see if you would actually obey my commands.
I have obeyed every single one of your commands, Master Brain. Though I am volatile, as you so bluntly put it, my loyalty to my brothers and sister is not to be questioned. Though if you are referring to my loyalty to you, then you are correct to have asked rather than initiating an order. Zabrak walked off, his cloak billowing behind him.
I shall wait for you outside, Master. I shall gather the others and inform them of the situation. Brain nodded as he picked up his staff. As soon as Zabrak left the room, Brain looked down at the staff in his hands. Well, no comments. He asked the staff. Surprisingly, the staff did reply. You know, Brain, that Zabrak guy really kind of rubs me the wrong way. He is not afraid to express his opinion of you, and he is not afraid to disobey you, though his strength shows that he has the power to back up his statements should he decide to get physical. Remind me again, why you recruited him. Because, in this game of the Balam Alliance, we all need a trump card. Though Zero is sleeping, I cannot risk having to use him as Zero is far too dangerous. Zabrak is my trump card for now, but he is right when I say that I consider him expendable. Though his skill set is unique, the other 6 have allowed this guild to survive without him. Zabrak may be an asset, but he has a limit to his uses. I see. The staff spoke once more before its eye holes began to move as if they were actual eyes, making an expression of deep thought. Well, I hope it wouldn't come to that. Zabrak is stronger than you, and I would hate for you to bring out Zero so soon into the game. The staff told the white-haired man. No need to worry, Clodoa. Zabrak may be strong, but I am confident I shall not require Zero to dispatch of him should the time come. He told the staff, now named Clodoa. Clodoa nodded, his skeletal teeth gritting against the orb held in his mouth. I find myself doubting you, Brain, but just try not make that time appear soon. As you said, Zabrak is an asset, keep him that way. Brain nodded before he gripped Clodoa tightly and headed outside of the guild headquarters. As Brain walked outside of the Oracion Siete headquarters, he found Zabrak watching his fellow members. Angel was flipping one of her angel magic coins and calling heads or tails with them. Racer was laying on the grass, curled up like a sleeping cat. Hotai was reading his book, Cobra and Kuberos were just staring at one another, and Midnight was sleeping atop his magic carpet again. Oracion Siete. Brain spoke. The 5 mages, minus the sleeping Midnight, all suddenly stood at attention before the man. Yes, Master Brain. The white-haired man glanced to Zabrak with a look that said, I expect this respect from you as well. Zabrak responded with a light chuckle before turning away from the older man. Your training over the past few years has allowed you to evolve your magic, changing it from just slowing down your opponents and converting it into actual increases of speed. Your animalistic side has become more potent, and so you have heightened senses. Well done.
Thank you, Master. The long-nosed man growled out with a toothy smirk.
Angel, you have the ability to summon 2 celestial spirits at a time, and due to the finding of Scorpio's key has made you a better asset. In addition, your new ability, Angel Magic, has shown its pluses, though I urge you to remember the drawback of using it. So use it sparingly. Yes, Master. The long-haired girl said. Hotai, you and Cobra have not learned any new magic, but your skill increase has been noticeable. Thank you, Master. They said, Kuberos hissing as she coiled around the sound magic user. Midnight. He stated. The sleeping mage flinched and his red eyes slowly opened.
Yes, Father, he spoke. My son, Midnight. You have improved under my tutelage, having learned to wield the dark magic that I wield. Use it wisely.
Understood, Father. All of you, on our trip to Tartaros aboard the Grimoire Heart airship, I must stress that we must avoid conflict, but the reason for informing you all of your current strengths is to show that should conflict arise. I have the utmost faith in your abilities. Now prepare yourselves, Hades is about to arrive. Brain said as he tapped Clodoa on the grass-covered ground. Skies of Fury, unknown location. Master Hades, we are nearing the Wood Sea. The Grimoire Heart grunt told his superior. The bearded man nodded. All right. Prepare the guest chambers for our new passengers. However, as you and I both know, we will not trust them entirely, so keep them under watch at every second, of every minute, of every hour for the duration of OD. Yes, Master. I shall inform the captain. However, Master, may I ask as to why you are allowing Oracion Siete to board the airship? Hades stroked his lengthy, white beard and chuckled. Because it will take downtime for either one of the 2 of us to wait on one another should we, or Oracion reach Tartaros's base before the other. This is mainly for convenience, my boy. Understood, Master. The grunt nodded and rose up from his kneeling position before turning to leave. My son. Yes, Master. The mask-wearing grunt glanced back at Hades. The former second master of Fairy Tail watched his underling with a curious gaze. Tell me, how are our new recruits doing? Which ones, Master?
Our 2 new members of Purgatory, Gara and Shukaku.
Well, master, to tell you the truth, we tend to avoid those too. Shukaku is insane and Gaara is just frickin' scary. Pardon my bluntness. The grunt bowed low. Hades chuckled before waving the man off. It's fine, my son. Honesty is encouraged, though to a certain degree of course. I understand, Gaara and Shukaku do tend to give off this aura of uncertainty towards them, but their record for these past few weeks has shown that they are loyal and willing to follow orders. Though, Gaara tends to be a bit more rebellious, showing to only do mission requests that are sure to end in bloodshed. A hemophiliac is what Gaara is, so I would consider you carry out your regular actions and avoid the boy. He seems very unstable. Understood, master. Also, alert the dining hall to prepare the dinner for myself, the kin and our guests. I shall contact Ultir.
As you wish. The grunt then left the room to do as his master had instructed. Purhito looked at the lacrima that lay on the stand beside his throne and stared at his aged face. He stroked the wrinkled skin and frowned. To be young again. I may gain that once I awaken Zareth and gain the keys to unlock the Dark Mage. Though I wonder. The Dark Guild Master chuckled to himself. When was the last time I had called myself Purhito? Hades picked up the lacrima and channeled his magic energy into it. A dark purple cloud formed within it and the magic energy shot through the air towards its receiver. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Jinchuriki theme.
Unknown location, Fury. No. Please, I'll do anything. Please, just leave me alone. Let me live. Please. The man struggled to free himself from the sand as it crawled over his body, already reaching his ribs. The red-haired man, Sabaku no Gaara, watched with an emotionless look as his sand continued to stretch across his victim. Gaara raised his hand as soon as the sand fully encompassed the man before him.
Sabaku Q, sand binding coffin. Gaara spoke in an emotionless tone, his arm outstretched and his hand positioned in a way that was reminiscent to that of someone holding a cup. Sabaku Soso, sand waterfall funeral. Gaara clenched his hand into a fist and the sand suddenly imploded within itself, crushing the man into a pulp. The sand then began to leak blood onto the ground before said sand retracted from the crushed, dead body of the former human being. The sand returned to the gourd on Gaara's back, only a small amount remaining behind. That small remainder swirled to life before solidifying and changed into that of Shukaku the Exceed. His white wings flapped lazily as he licked his lips, his teeth stained with crimson. Damn, blood tastes good, Shukaku chuckled with an insane grin. I must say, your combination is very unique. Master Hades will be very pleased to know you succeeded in completing the task at hand, Gaara. Shukaku. Hey, SXY lady, why don't you thank us properly by getting on your knees and sucking my... He never completed the sentence as a spike of ice suddenly rose up from beneath the foul-mouthed Exceed, stopping only a millimeter before his throat. Ultir aimed an icy glare at Shukaku before walking around the numerous, bloody corpses that lay upon the earth, courtesy of the new members of the Seven Kin of Purgatory. Finish that sentence and I will end you. I'm the one who got you all this position into my guild, so pull your head out of your ass and treat me with respect, cat. Or should I call Matabi-chan for you? Ultir added with a devilish grin. The sand-colored cat's eyes widened before hiding behind Gaara, who merely raised an eyebrow at his Exceed partner. Ultir nodded firmly with the same grin plastered on her face. That's what I thought, she said before reaching the end of the pile of corpses. Entering what seemed to be an old ruin, the dark-haired woman smiled as she pulled out a cup made entirely of gold. It had two curved handles and seemed to be void of dust or any type of filth. There you are, my precious little key. Ultir spoke with a loving tone. She performed a small bit of requip and stored the cup in a pocket dimension before exiting the ruins. Gaara-kun, Shukaku. We have the key. Let's head back now. Alright, Shukaku said as he rested atop Gaara's mop of red hair. The green-eyed boy nodded before turning and walking off. Ultir frowned before jogging after the duo and walking in time with the sand user. Oh, Gaara-kun, you're so mean leaving me with Shukaku. Do you not care for me? She asked with a joking tone as she put on a cute pout. Gaara, without even a second glance, spoke with his ever monotonous voice. Listen very well, Ultir. I love only myself. I care for nothing other than myself. My existence is to kill others. By killing, I feel. Gaara suddenly gained a maniacal grin, his eyes widening with insanity, alive. Ultir gulped audibly as she felt the killing intent roll off of her associate. I should kill you too, to give further meaning to my existence. Gaara added, turning to face her with the insane look on his face, but as quickly as it had formed, it had dropped. The insane, sand user frowned. But then I would have to deal with too many annoyances like that old fool you call master. Ultir refrained from speaking out against the redhead, lest she entice the male's wrath. Just then a small pulse of magic power flowed through her being. Recognizing the feel of it, Ultir removed her teal lacrima from out of her cleavage and pumped a small bit of her own magic power into it. The image of Hades found itself present with the lacrima's core. Ultir, my child. Are Gaara and Shukaku with you? "We are here, old man," Shukaku stated. Ignoring the jab at his age, Hades nodded as he glanced at the two. "Excellent, so you have completed the task, correct? You have the second key of Zareth. We have 1 cup and 1 locket. The other 6 keys need to be located." The former teacher of Makarov nodded at the young woman's reply. "As expected of 3 of my top mages. Now then, I must ask that you 3 return to the airship immediately, it is very important." "Understood, master." The image of Purhito vanished from the lacrima before Ultir reached out to Gaara. As if on instinct, Shukaku converted himself into sand and stopped Ultir from touching the boy. Shukaku's golden-colored eyes suddenly appeared on the cloud of sand that obstructed the time arc user. "As SXY as you are, Ultir-chan. Please refrain from touching my partner, nay," Shukaku spoke. "We must make contact if I am to be able to warp him back to the airship, as neither you or Gaara possess the ability to perform teleportation magic," Ultir said. Shukaku's eyes narrowed before he became his regular feline form. "Very well." Ultir nodded and she gripped Gaara's arm gently. The redhead didn't flinch, but the swift glance he shot her spoke volumes. "Do anything and he will kill her on the spot." Teleportation magic. Grimoire heart. A dark purple magic seal sprung up beneath their feet and Ultir, Shukaku and Gaara vanished in a column of purple light. Skies of Fury. Unknown location. Hades stood before his 4 present kin of purgatory. Meridi and Caprico stood at attention, waiting for their master to speak. Rusty Rose adjusted his shades while Kane Hikaru played with his doll. Mr. is a fairly tall, lanky, pale-skinned man with silver hair which is made into pompadour style and black eyes. He wore a pair of silver shades with dark blue tinted lenses and his clothing consisted of a dark gray, sweater-like shirt with a dark blue jacket worn over it. The jacket had fur lining along its collar and he also wore a pair of dark-colored pants and boots. A brown belt with a large buckle on it was wrapped around his waist, over the shirt. He completed his look with a pair of white gloves. On his left sleeve was a band where the symbol for Grimoire heart lay. Kane Hikaru was a white-skinned, fairly muscular, but majorly overweight man. He was extremely tall, standing at a height that rivaled even Caprico's. He had shaggy, dark hair and slight sideburns. He had a huge head, a comparatively small face, and a very thick neck. Among the most prominent of his facial features were his large eyebrows, his bulging chin, and his thick lips. He wore a pair of brown superhero-like tights and a yellow cape which was held securely in place by a blue band of some sort that was wrapped around his neck. 2 brown belts lay across his bare chest, cross over each other in an X. "Master, we've been standing here for a few minutes. What are we waiting for?" Rusty Rose asked. "Ultir, Gaara and Shukaku are to return soon. They have found the second key of Zareth, but that is not the reason I have called you all here." As the others were about to ask why, a purple magic seal formed on the ground between them and Hades. In a pillar of violet, Ultir, Gaara and Shukaku stood before the other kin of purgatory. Ultir turned to her master and dropped onto one knee before having the golden cup materialize in her hands. "The key of Zareth, Master Hades. Only 6 more are left."
Hades nodded as he took the golden cup. He walked to the back of his throne room and tapped on a large, platinum box.
He tapped it and a magic seal burst to life upon its surface. Tumblers and chambers could be heard moving on the other end of the box before a small click met the aged man's ears. He opened the box and revealed the red velvet interior. 8 magic seals hovered in the air. Atop one of the 8, a topaz-colored locket hovered, the force of gravity not applying to it due to the magic seals. Hades then placed the golden cup atop one of the empty seals. It too began to hover over the floor of the box. With a satisfied look on his face, Hades shut the door to the safe box and the seal magic lock glowed once more before vanishing, the click being heard once more as it closed shut.
"Very good, my children. Gaara, Shukaku, Ultir, you have done well." Gaara nodded while Shukaku gave a toothy grin, revealing his blood-stained teeth to the eye-patch-wearing mage. The man resisted the urge to cringe in disgust before clearing his throat. As the 3 members of kin took their places in the line, Hades sat back in his throne. "Now, my children, I have called you all here to notify you of the current situation we will have. Due to the deaths of Zankro and Azuma by heart and lung problems, our new replacement members, Sabaku no Gaara and his partner, Shukaku, have taken up the mantles as our new kin of purgatory. 1 month has passed since they have joined our ranks and they have performed splendidly, carrying out all of the mission I have tasked them with without even so much as a pricked finger." "What do you mean by that last part, Master?" Meridi asked. Ultir turned to her pink-haired subordinate. "It means that Gaara-kun and Shukaku have returned from all of the missions that the Master has given to them without a scratch." "Even the ones where you all had to fight numerous enemies?" Rusty Rose asked with a raised eyebrow. "I find that hard to believe for a duo of weak rookies you just joined." Kane watched the apathetic redhead, eating an ice cream cone which he seemed to have pulled out of nowhere, out of the uneasiness he felt towards said redhead. "Fuck you, human."
Shukaku snarled, his golden eyes blazing with rage. Would you like me to show you just how we didn't receive any scratches on us? I'll promise you that you won't be able to sit on your stupid, gay ass for weeks from the brutal ass kicking I'll give you. You stupid cat, don't think you can insult me and get away with it, and I'm not gay, damn it. Enough. Both of you, Hades roared. Killer intent and magic power washed over the entire room and all were silenced. With an adjustment of his cloak out of annoyance, Hades stared at his mages. Now is not the time for the guild to be fighting amongst themselves. As I was saying, Gaara and Shukaku have done exceedingly well this past month, but one of the members of the Balam Alliance wishes to see if they are worthy of being part of my guild and thus, the alliance. Show me this person, master. And I will kill them. I will show them the meaning of my existence. Sand poured out from the gourd on Gaara's back and swirled menacingly around his person. Those who stood near him, except for Shukaku, edged away from the obviously insane mage. Hades raised his hand and Gaara seemed to calm his insanity and the sand retreated back into the gourd, its cork reforming from the sand itself. Yes, well Gaara, you need not be so violent, they merely want to test your abilities. Also, the reason for why I wished for no infighting within my guild is because, for temporary use, Orochimaru has been granted access to use the airship along with us to reach the designated meeting spot for us three. This is per my approval, so there is to be no disagreements. The other reason for this temporary usage of the airship is to save time waiting for one another to arrive at the meeting place and also because Master Brain's newest member, a young man by the name of Zabrak, is also to be tested alongside Gaara and Shukaku. Understood, Master. The seven kin of Purgatory chorused. With a nod of approval, Hades dismissed his mages. Hades then watched as Gaara and Shukaku paused before their exit, watching around the throne room with a cautious look. Well, Shukaku had a cautious look. Gaara seemed to be mildly curious. Hades watched as Shukaku's body seemed to break down and become sand particles before shooting off towards one of the support beams of the throne room. There was an explosion of sand as Shukaku reformed atop the beam, his fangs bared and his star-pupiled eyes widening with feline rage. A hiss was released from the sand-colored exceed before it flew back over to Gaara and rested atop his head. What was wrong, Shukaku? There was something there. Watching us. Though, it seems the little bugger is a quick one and vanished before I could get to it. I suggest you keep your eyes peeled, Master. Shukaku advised the man. With a wary nod, the elder mage watched as his subordinates wandered through the door. Hades' single eye narrowed in annoyance, his fingers drumming against the armrest of his throne. So, it seems our little mouse has returned. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But there will not be a third time. Whoever you are, I will find out who you are and your little spy will be eliminated if I know when I catch it. Then you will know the power of Grimoire Heart. Master, we have arrived at the Wood Sea and are making landing preparations. Orochimaru is waiting for us below. The captain of the airship informed his superior. Hades nodded as he picked up his lacrima. Understood, Captain. Make sure to inform the rest of the staff to make last-minute preparations to the dining hall. We do not want to make a bad impression on our guests after all.
As you wish, Master Hades. Hades rested the lacrima back on its pedestal before rising from his throne, his cloak billowing behind him as marched through his chamber doors. It was time to greet the guests. The members of Orochimaru stood before the seven kin of Purgatory and their master. Master Brain. Hades spoke with a polite nod of the head. Master Hades, my guild and I thank you for allowing us to board your airship. This is only you or you. We are very much capable of returning to the Wood Sea once our meeting with Tartaros concludes. Of course, Master Brain. Now come, join me and my kin. We have prepared the dining hall for your arrival. Hades gave a small chuckle as he heard some of the members of his own guild and his associates' guild release growls of hunger. Follow me. Brain nodded and followed behind Hades. His other guild members followed along silently behind the kin of Purgatory, however Gaara had laid back and his moss-green eyes caught the silver eyes of one Zabrak Granful. The muscular giant of a man raised an eyebrow as he saw Gaara stare at him, the exceed atop his head doing the same. Yes. Zabrak spoke to the sand using duo. Gaara walked up to the large figure, unafraid by Zabrak's intimidating form and seemed to analyze him, Zabrak seeming to do the same. Suddenly, Gaara broke out into an insane grin, surprising the density magic user by how crazed his eyes became. You are strong, I can tell. Your blood will do well in satisfying my existence when I kill you. I can shatter your bones, split open your skull, or maybe I can have my sand tear you apart and watch the rivers of blood flow from your dying body. Gaara covered his left side of his face with his left hand and released an insane chuckle. Zabrak, though not one to be surprised easily, had to give off such an expression. This mage. His killer intent and bloodlust. It's beyond that of even some of the people I had to deal with in the Tower of Heaven. Never have I felt such a feeling from a single figure and that cat doesn't seem to be helping at all. True to the word, Shukaku had gained a similar toothy grin to his partner.
his golden eyes appearing to glow as his tail swished back and forth with what seemed to be anticipation. "Now, my good man. Though you seem to be powerful yourself, I suggest we postpone any form of conflict until after our meeting with this Tartaros guild." The density magic user's voice sounded a bit ragged due to his heavy breathing. Gaara and Shukaku didn't drop their crazed looks, but seemed to become even more enjoyed by the man's words. "I have the feeling that I just made things worse for myself with this man," the silver-eyed man thought. "The anticipation to kill you is too great. Come, Zabrak Grandful. Help me feel alive." Sand seemed to explode out of the gourd in a large wave and Zabrak's eyes narrowed as he shifted into a fighting stance, but as the sand struck forth and Zabrak's arms reared back for a crushing blow, powerful waves of magic flowed through the hallway they were in. Gaara and Zabrak watched with shocked expressions as they saw someone they had never seen before coming from the opposite direction they were headed. The man walked out of the darkness made from the lack of light in the hallway and showed his figure to the two mages and the Exceed. The man was large in terms of height and muscle build. He was shorter than Zabrak's 7 feet, but not by much, and his muscles were greatly defined by the tight, navy blue top he wore. Said top was covered by a dark purple, white-lined cloth. The cloth was tied at the waist by a light red sash and had a pair of black, wing-like patterns on the upper torso area, while on the extensive part that lay below the waist was a stylized black sun. He wore a pair of dark pants and black boots and had a long white coat worn over his outfit. The man's skin was a healthy tan color and he had dark-colored hair. It was very long, shown by the fact that it was tied back into a clothed ponytail. He had large sideburns that appeared to bend at a sharp angle, protruding on his face in the shape of triangles, and he had beard stubble around his face and chin. The man had a hooked nose and large eyes with significantly small, black irises. The man had noticeable bags under his eyes, showing that he may not have slept much or not at all. On the visible area of his arm, his left wrist to be specific, he had a tattoo in the shape of 2 arrows pointing downwards. The man neared the 2 silent mages and the odd Exceed, his magic aura seeming to grow more intensely with each step he took. He then stopped in front of the 2 and Gaara immediately had his sand retreat into his gourd, a scowl present on his face. "Come on, Shukaku." Gaara spoke in his trademark monotone voice. Shukaku nodded as he flew after his partner. Zabrak stood back up and looked down at the shorter man with a rather surprised look on his face. The powerful man, obviously a mage, stared with fierce, unblinking eyes at the larger mage before him. The silence was apparently deafening to Zabrak as he watched the man straight in the eyes. The silence was then broken as the dark-haired man spoke. "Come, I assume our masters are expecting and we won't want to keep them waiting." Zabrak nodded slowly and followed the man. However, before he even took 2 steps, the man turned and reached out to grab the large titan. Zabrak reacted and grabbed the man's arm at the wrist before twisting and forcing the man to the ground using his immense strength. A strong kick to the chest forced Zabrak off of the man, but Zabrak's grip remained strong, only for it to be broken as a harsh kick sent him skidding backwards from the force. "Interesting. You are very strong, not a lot of people can remain standing from my kick." The man chuckled with amusement. Zabrak didn't feel the pain from the kick, his body having endured far worse pain. However, he knew the kick was strong as the man had successfully freed himself from his grip, a very hard task in itself. "Who are you?" Zabrak asked. The man kept the smirk on his face and walked past Zabrak. "Your strength means that you are the so-called Titan of Oracion. Zabrak Grandful, correct?" Zabrak nodded only to find a hand held out to him. Taking the hint, he shook it and the man spoke once more. "I am the second in command of Grimoire Heart. You may refer to me as Blue Note Stinger." Insert music. Fairy Tale Guild Darkness. Outskirts of Fury, unknown location. Iwan Dreyar watched from his large chair that he called his throne as Lucy and Obra stood before him. "Any progress on the spine, Lucy?" The little black imp's ever-present grin widened slightly before it released a high-pitched cackle. Spinning in a circle, Lucy exploded into a twister of black smoke, said twister extending outwards like a cloud to form a ring of ebony smoke. An image then formed in the center of the ring, replaying the entire scene of Hades addressing the kin of Purgatory up to the split second before Shukaku would have pounced on him. Iwan gritted his teeth at this. "So it seems the Balam Alliance is meeting. Also, it seems that Purhito is becoming aware of your presence and you were nearly caught, Lucy." The imp reformed in a swirl of black smoke and its grin turned upside down, becoming a frown. The little devil's form fidgeted nervously atop Obra's top hat as Iwan gave a hard stare at it. The Ogono Fujin and Onibi Myobu have been out of commission due to that titanic battle with Guildarts, but they both seem to have gone off the grid. 3 of the most notorious dark guilds are meeting up and Tucson has allowed for Salamander, Fullbuster and Titania to go on a training trip. Along with that blonde celestial spirit mage. Things are really hyping up it seems, and with these new, powerful members coming into play within Oracion Siete and Grimoire Heart, it may allow for me to go into the open for a moment. Lucy, Obra. Due to the circumstances from Purhito nearly finding you, There's only so many chances we may get before you are spotted and captured." Obra and Lucy remained silent as they watched the master of Raventail with unblinking gazes. "However, knowledge is power and I need my intel updated." Lucy. "While Oracion Siete is on that airship, it is far more dangerous to go back aboard it." "Go back on the airship." Lucy's eyes widened considerably, but Iwan continued to speak. "But you will not go back yet." A sigh of relief escaped the imp's mouth. Obram lord and observe its progress. The preparation for the guild war with Fairy Tail still has some time before completion. Find out what's going on and then I will call upon you when it is time to get ready. Finally we will see the faces of Tartaros. Oberyn nodded and the bird-like man turned and exited the master's quarters. Yuan pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. Things were getting much too problematic and it was giving the dark-haired Dreyar a headache. "Obra, Nulpudding and Alexei. Those are all I have to make up my guild so far. I need more members in order to further my plans." Iwan rose up from his chair and threw on his cloak, brushing his hand through his hair. "Time to look for some more minions." Yuan then paused in his leaving before walking over to his room's desk. Atop the polished mahogany surface lay a large chessboard with pieces with different symbols atop them. On one end of the board was a chess piece with the image of Raventail's insignia on it. Near it was an image of Phantom Lord's piece which was placed within the middle of the chessboard. One piece was in the shape of Fairy Tail's symbol which was placed 4 spaces from the Queen's area on opposite side of the board, directly opposite of Phantom Lord's. Yuan lightly knocked over the Fairy Tail piece. "War lies on the horizon for my old Two Sands Guild and Guildarts would most likely have suffered greatly if he hadn't already been killed during this clash." Grimoire Heart and Oracion Siete's pieces were then moved off to the side where a rook and bishop would normally lie. A third piece that had a capital T painted on it was placed so as to make a triangle with the 2 other Balam Alliance members. "Tartaros meets with its associates," he said. He then picked up 2 pieces in the likeness of the deity Fujin, which was painted a golden color, and next to it was the image of a multi-tailed kitsune. He moved those 2 pieces to the edge of the board, far away from the other pieces. 2 SS-class criminals, the Ogono Fujin and the Onibi Myobu, have gone off the grid and will not be set into play for quite a while. Yuan completed his actions by finally moving the piece with the image of Raventail's insignia on it. "And it is time for me to move out." He moved the Raventail piece forward. Insert music, Naruto Shippuden Dark Clouds. Unknown location, Fury Oracion Siete's members as well as Grimoire Hearts stepped off the latter guild's airship before the doors closed behind them with a hiss of the hydraulics. Blue Note stood beside his only superior and looked back at Gaara and Shukaku. "So Tartaros wants to see the shrimpy red head and the cat?" Blue Note asked, jabbing his thumb in their direction. Hades nodded. "They would like reassurance in our choice of ace members," he replied as he stroked his beard. "I hear someone coming." Cobra spoke, Kuberos coiling around her shoulders. The small talk ended abruptly as both parties came face to face with a figure who emerged from the brush from where they landed. The woman had tanned skin and wore a pair of black framed glasses. Her hair was black with a single yellow streak running down the middle of it. She had a very voluptuous figure, with D-cup breasts and a slim waist. She was dressed in a crimson ball gown and wore a ruby necklace around her neck. A pair of black high heels completed the outfit. "Welcome, Oracion Siete. Grimoire Heart. The master of Tartaros is expecting you." She spoke, her shocking emerald eyes staring at them with an expression that made them all glance at Gaara for a split second, wondering if the two were related somehow. "Follow me," she said, her soft, melodious voice extending to their ears. With a nod, the 2 dark guilds followed the green-eyed woman, her crimson dress acting as a beacon to them as they moved through the brush. They then halted as the woman stopped before a large boulder. "Why did we stop?" Angel asked. Cobra and Kuberos narrowed their eyes at the boulder. "I hear voices below the rock. There must be a hidden passage beneath it." "Impressive, Brain. Your boy seems to have a very adept sense of hearing," Hades complimented. Brain nodded in thanks. "It is his pride and one of the magics he requires to complete his prayer," Brain said, to hear the voice of his companion. Ignoring the useless comments, the woman placed her dainty hand against the rough rock's surface. "Entrance required." Gaia. With a flash of green, a magic seal sprung up on the rock's surface and the rock seemed to disassemble into blocks before parting to reveal a set of stairs that descended into the darkness below the earth. "We have to go down there?" Racer asked. "I do not see where else you should need to go, Racer of Oracion Siete. Now follow me." The woman spoke. Zabrak stared at the staircase before entering last behind his comrades in the Grimoire Heart Guild. "The darkness. Such a seemingly comforting sight to me," the gray-haired titan thought as he reminisced about his early days in the Tower of Heaven. "I was born in darkness and now I must venture through it." The group descended into the dark caverns and the boulder suddenly reconstructed itself as if it had never been moved in the first place. Underground caverns, Fury the group wandered silently through the dark, Cobra and the woman, Gaia, directing them through the seemingly eternal network of tunnels. An orb of light hovered in Hades's palm and provided the group with visibility, no matter how limited it was. "Where does this lead to? We've been walking for quite a while," Ultir said as she felt a small hand grip her own. She looked down to see Meredy watching the walls and ceiling for anything that may attempt to jump out at them. Ultir patted the pink-haired girl's head. "Don't worry, Meredy-chan. We'll be fine." Meredy nodded with a slightly more calm look on her face. Gaia then turned to face her guests. "These tunnels are created by myself, Gaia. I made these networking tunnels so as to make an unseen path to the guild's location. It stretches for several miles beneath the earth, and as a safety precaution, only I and the other members of Tartaros are able to use the entrance to the tunnel," Gaia stated before stopping. Hades looked at the young dual-hair-colored woman as he held up his sphere of light. "We have arrived. Master Hades of Grimoire Heart, I request you take a few steps back with the others." The former fairy tale member nodded and stepped back along with the others. With a raise of her hand, Gaia dug her fingers into the dead end of the tunnel she created, and suddenly there was a low rumble and the wall seemed to crack and break before Gaia pulled the earth apart, creating a cleanly made rectangle. "Amazing," Brain muttered. "Thank you, Master Brain of Oracion Siete. Continue to follow me to Tartaros' main domain." Gaia then led the two dark guilds through the path before pulling apart the earthen wall at the other end, and the others could only stare in awe. Walls of black earth that seemed to be hardened and compacted to remain sturdy were lined with numerous crystals and jewels. Several large steel beams rose up from the ground like tree trunks at strategic locations, acting as support beams. Scattered throughout the large expanse of space were numerous buildings the size of a small house. The houses were made of the same earthen material as the wall and were lined up on either side in straight lines like one would find in a condo area, where each house looked exactly the same as the one adjacent to it. At the end of the row of houses, in the center of the two rows was a large, earth-brown building that, if it weren't for the fact that there was a black steel fence circling it, it would have blended in with the crystal-embedded wall and no one would be the wiser. These houses are the living quarters of the members of the guild. 3 members per house. Only the common members stay there. The elite members, myself included, alongside our master, live within the actual guild quarters," Gaia explained. The group then stopped at the steel sprung up at the location where Gaia stepped. A pale beam of light encompassed the young woman, and the green-eyed member of Tartaros blinked when it was over. "Gaia-sama, welcome back," a voice spoke from beyond the gate. The steel fence then warped and a hole formed in the fencing, allowing for Gaia and the other members of the Balam Alliance through the gate. Upon entering through the gate, the member of Tartaros led them to the guild quarters and to the main area where there were a few members of the Dark Guild waiting for them. Within the area was a large dining table with black leather chairs. Casting ominous light and shadow, an eerie dark blue flame flickered within the fireplace. Hidden within the shadows of the room, a lone figure sat in a cushy red chair. Said chair facing them. "Welcome back, Gaia." The man spoke with a deep yet soft and polite voice, his eyes snapping open revealing the intense storm gray orbs within. "Master." Gaia curtsied to the man in the chair before walking up to the man. The master of Tartaros glanced at the others as Gaia took her place at his right side. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Akatsuki theme. "Master Hades, Master Brain. Welcome to Tartaros." The man spoke, not moving from his chair. He gestured to the chairs. "Please, have a seat." Hades, Brain, Blue Note, Racer, Angel, Ultir, Meredy and Rusty Rose sat down, while Gaara and Shukaku, Zabrak, Kane, Hatai, Cobra and Kuberos, and Caprico remained standing. The slumbering Midnight remained atop his floating magic carpet. "So, Master Hades. Master Brain, as you both know, having informed you of this beforehand, I have called this meeting of the Balam Alliance because you have been said to have inducted some replacement ace members into your guilds. As you know, the main members of our alliance are Hades' Grimoire Heart, Brain's Oracion Siete and my Tartaros. So, in order to remain in a position of power amongst the supporting guilds that we control and to make sure these new members are not a waste of space in your guilds, I would like to test them," he said. His storm gray eyes scanned the room and focused on the standing group of individuals. "So which of you are Sabaku no Gaara, Shukaku and Zabrak Granful?" The named figures stepped out of the lineup. The Dark Guild Master observed the 3 and then narrowed his eyes once he came to Shukaku. "Excuse me, my dear Hades, but please tell me you are not trying to pull some sort of joke when you brought along this cat." "I'm not a cat, I am the Ichibi no Shukaku, one of the most powerful entities among 9. My siblings and I contain powers that you humans could never even dream of possessing," Shukaku snarled. Hades facepalmed at how loose-lipped the feline was. Tartaros' master smirked, the shift in his facial muscles evident by the blue light of the fires. "Confident in your abilities are you? Well then, if you and Sabaku no Gaara would be so kind as to prove this statement, would you like to battle one of my own top members?" The 2 sand users stepped up and sand swirled to life around their forms. Gaia bent over to look at her master in the eyes. Master, who do you wish call upon? One of the titans or one of the demons? The shadowed man released a of thought before his dull-colored eyes seemed to brighten. Call one of the titans. Ring out. Hyperion. Gaia rolled her eyes at her master's choice of fighter. Master, are you sure? The gray-eyed man nodded. Yes, though you have a dislike for your fellow titan's brash methods. Hyperion is not a titan for nothing. Call him. Gaia released a grunt of annoyance and she tapped her black high-heeled shoes on the ground. The earth rumbled slightly as Gaia and the master of Tartaros waited for the titan to respond. Within a matter of seconds, a golden light shone in the center of the room, and when it died down, laying in a circle of scorched earth was Hyperion. Hyperion was a young man, slightly younger than Gaia had seemed. One would estimate his age to be around 25 years old. His skin was a golden bronze and his hair was a shining gold, like the light he appeared from, and it stretched all the way to between his shoulder blades. He had a pair of golden yellow eyes. He was clothed in a full suit of armor colored like that of fire. Red, orange, yellow and gold swirled into an amazing mixture of hues that contrasted brightly with the dark blue flames within the fireplace. Strapped to his back by a single leather strap was a spear. It had a 6-foot-long shaft made of black metal and a silver head made the pointed blade at its tip. Master, you summoned me? Gaia-chan. Long time no see. Uranus-san is very bothered that you won't return his calls, you know. He chuckled as the green-eyed woman's mood seemed to cause the room to drop a few degrees in temperature. If I had permission from Master, Uranus would have been castrated and his useless balls tossed into the sea, Gaia growled. Hey, no need to be all sadistic here, Gaia-chan. Uranus-san would be very disappointed to know you'd want to do that to him. I know that. The earth trembled as Gaia stamped her foot on the ground in rage. Hyperion always knew how to make Gaia angry, and though the shadow-encased man found it amusing, he, along with his fellow masters, had to get this over with. Hyperion, enough of angering Gaia, he ordered. The golden-haired man nodded. I apologize, Master. What do you ask of me? The master pointed at Gaara and Shukaku. Your task is to test the skills of these new mages that have joined the Balam Alliance's Big Three. Sabaku no Gaara and Shukaku of Grimoire Heart, and also, Zabrak Grandful of Oracion Siete. Hyperion raised a curious eyebrow. Siete? I thought it was Oracion Cis? The young Zabrak is a 7th member, hence the change in name. Hyperion snorted in amusement, causing Brain's eyes narrow at the young mage of Tartaros. What do you find funny, Hyperion-san? The dark-skinned man asked. I find it funny that you were so lazy and unimaginative in coming up with a new name for your guild due to this Zabrak guy joining it. I told him that at a later date as well, Zabrak said. Hyperion and Zabrak's comments made everyone in the room sweat drop before turning to the now embarrassed Brain, who was tapping Claudoa on the ground in annoyance. Just hurry up and get this over with. Ooh, I think I struck a nerve. So, whoever wants to fight me first, come at me. It doesn't matter. One at a time or all three of you. I'll take you down. Grimoire Heart and Oracion Siete widened their eyes in shock. Just how stupid is this guy? No one can take down such a sturdy guy like Zabrak, Angel said. Gaara's never been scratched and Shukaku can convert his body to sand and avoid damage. I don't know how Hyperion will beat our guys. Rusty Rose said. Kane chewed on a piece of meat as he watched the tense atmosphere. Maybe this may be a good fight. Kane spoke in a stuttered voice. Whether it be by shyness or a speech impediment, no one knew why Kane spoke like that. Now let us proceed to the battlefield. Battlefield? Angel questioned, only to see the gray-eyed master snap his fingers and a large black magic seal sprung up out of his hands. The magic then pulsed and the entire room was engulfed in a black bubble, and within said bubble was a large pocket dimension where a coliseum of some sort lay. Everyone was seated in the stands, while the master of Tartaros and Gaia were seated in the Emperor's box. Zabrak watched from his place in the stands, Gaara and Shukaku having decided to take the first battle. Alright, you little pretty boy, light show, let me and Gaara show you just much we're going to wipe the floor with your stupid ass. Then we'll spill your blood and drink it all up. Shukaku grinned widely. Gaara crossed his arms over his chest and the cork on his gourd popped off, sand flowing out and bending to his will. Shukaku then landed in the cloud of sand and his body contorted and grew. Shukaku's lean feline form grew larger, arms growing more beast-like with sharp, dark the blue vein-like markings on his body growing more prominent. The sand fused with Shukaku's body before the exceed suddenly became a large tanuki about the size of Gaara. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Kakazu, Ichibi Moto. Tanuki, one-tailed mode. Tanuki. Shukaku snarled. Drool dripping from his mouth like a rabid animal. All who never saw this transformation occur before watched in awe at the beast that used to be the tiny exceed. And now we'll crush you and take your blood. Shukaku roared before taking off at high speeds. Hyperion drew his spear and twirled it expertly. Try it, beast. Hyperion gained a serious look as his golden eyes and he twisted, while performing an upward slash with his spear, slicing Shukaku in half. He then leapt aside as a blast of sand from Gaara impacted with the ground. As he landed, he went into a roll as Shukaku's body rejoined together and he stretched out his right arm, the claws on his hands aiming to impale the Tartaro's member. Taking advantage of the outstretched limb, Hyperion sliced it off, earning a howl of pain from Shukaku. Hyperion's spear then glowed with golden light. With a swift horizontal slash, the arc of light flew forth and impacted with the bestial tanuki. Hyperion sidestepped a blow from Gaara's own sand before he began to step towards the red-haired boy while using his light-infused spear to deflect the sand strikes. He then reached Gaara and the young sand mage found his chin being forced upwards by the powerful uppercut he received. Hyperion cartwheeled out of the way as Shukaku crashed down on his position, but suddenly Shukaku's arm reached out and grabbed Hyperion, slamming him into the wall and dragging him along it. He was then hurled into the air, where Gaara seemed to have waiting for him. Gaara's sand then wrapped around his arm and morphed into a claw-equipped hand before punching the light user in the chest. Hyperion rocketed towards the ground before the ground he landed on seemed to have been softer and he wondered why. He got his answer as the ground beneath him had been converted from hard earth and became crushed minerals and sand. Shukaku then surfed along the sand as Gaara landed atop his back as if he were a surfboard. Gaara held out his hand and Hyperion quickly summoned his spear to his side in a flash of light, stabbing it into the sands. The sands parted as he let loose a blast of light and heat, turning some of the sand to glass. With numerous slashes of his spear, arcs of light energy impacted with both Gaara and Shukaku. Shukaku automatically reverted into a sand form and took the majority of the impact of the attacks, protecting his partner from the attack. When the shield dropped, Hyperion was already in their faces and his fists were alight with golden energy. Hikari no Kyojin no Genwaku Ken, Light Titan's blinding fist. The light-covered fists impacted with both Gaara and Shukaku with devastating force sending them flying through the air. Master, what kind of magic was that? Zabrak asked, curious as to having never seen it before. Brain tapped Claudoa on the stone steps of the Colosseum. That is a lost magic that can be considered on the level of Dragonslayer magic and Godslayer magic. That is Titanslayer magic, though it is a much older magic than the two I mentioned before. Brain explained. As he is using the power of a light titan, most likely his namesake, Hyperion, if he were to have learned from the actual Titan himself, would be able to absorb light and control light to his very will. He can also use light to such a degree that he may be able to generate high levels of heat energy and create powerful blasts of flame maybe. Zabrak tapped his chin and thought, interesting. Hyperion then leapt out of the way as Shukaku aimed to maim him, but he was soon met with the giant sand fist formed by Gaara's manipulation of the particles. Sand then began to climb up his body and Hyperion was encased in a cocoon of sand, leaving only his face visible. Gaara allowed the sand cocoon to obey his will and it rose up into the air. With a forceful swing of his hand, Hyperion crashed into the sands, sinking slightly beneath it. Making sure he would stay down for a moment longer, Shukaku burst out of the sand like a dolphin out of water. Inhaling deeply, his chest swelled to a large degree. Futon. Daitapa, the blast of pressurized wind drilled into Hyperion's body causing a scream to erupt from his throat. The spear-wielding mage landed on the sand and immediately, the tanuki capitalized on that. Hyperion aimed to get back up, but Shukaku then landed on the sands and his body converted entirely into pure sand. The sand washed over Hyperion, the noticeable bulge of blue vein-covered sand marking where Hyperion was buried. Gaara then outstretched his hands and a giant sand tsunami rose up from the depths and traveled towards Shukaku and the bound Hyperion. The shadow of the sand tsunami encompassed the two before it crashed down with terrific force. The two were swept away by it and many were in awe at the display of power brought about by Sabaku no Gaara. To make the sand move to such a degree, he must be something special. Well chosen, Hades. Tartaros' master thought. Gaia was thinking along the same lines, but though he had exceptional control, he lacks the amount of years of training and experience I had to manipulate the sands. I control the earth, but he is fixated on sand magic. He would be a greater mage once he gets the experience, Gaia thought. Shukaku rose up and snarled at Hyperion as the tanned man rose to his feet. The man was covered in sand and now had a few bruises and blood dripped from a wound on his head and leaked over his eyes and to the edge of chin. Droplets of crimson dotting the sandy floor. Your blood is mine, human. As Shukaku was about to bite down on Hyperion, the tanuki found himself impaled on a blade made entirely of light. In a flash, the spear of Hyperion reappeared before the demonic sand tanuki and said tanuki was sent into the sands as Hyperion grabbed him by the throat with a light-encased hand. He then spun and threw the tanuki at the surprised Gaara sending both tumbling into the sands. But the two had no moment's rest as his spear was encased in light and Hyperion let it loose as he threw it. The golden projectile touched down right at Gaara and Shukaku's location. Hikari no Kyojin no Ikoden, Light Titan's Flare Bomb. An explosion of light energy expanded outwards in a dome, and in a few seconds, the explosion died down, revealing Gaara and Shukaku were panting. An orb of sand that was coating them was about half destroyed, both nearly on the verge of unconsciousness. Seeing that his subordinate was defeated, Hades had Kane retrieve the boy and his exceed partner. Gaara and Shukaku, your test is concluded. Zabrak Granfall. You may challenge Hyperion next. The leader of Tartaros spoke. Gaia looked at the raging Titanslayer as Zabrak leapt from his position to the Colosseum floor in a single jump. The air in the Colosseum suddenly grew very dense, and everyone saw the sand suddenly begin to sink deeply where Zabrak stood, and they knew it wasn't from his weight. Master, Hyperion is rather damaged from that Dragonslayer. Should we replace him with someone else? The woman asked as she straightened her black and yellow hair. No, Hyperion can handle this one as well. He is a holder of one of the most ancient magics in the world of Earthland. However, we will see how young Zabrak fares in this bout. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Night Attack. Hyperion and Zabrak stared at one another, the makeshift wind of the pocket dimension swirling the sands. In a burst of speed, Hyperion made the first move. A flash appeared in Zabrak's face as Hyperion had used his Titanslayer magic to create a flash of light to blind his opponent. With a roar of pain, Zabrak rubbed his eyes to rid it of the flashing spots, but the light did its job and Hyperion crashed a light-encased kick against Zabrak's bare chest. The mask-wearing Oracion Siete member flipped in to right himself as he landed back on the sands, creating a small crater from the force. However, as soon as he landed, light bent around his body as Hyperion appeared behind him. Another kick was launched, moving at the speed of light, and slammed into Zabrak's back, but unlike last time, Zabrak was prepared for such a strong blow and Hyperion's eyes widened as he found his leg paining slightly. What the hell? It's like I kicked a steel bar. Rensa, chain, Zabrak stated. He then turned sharply and grabbed Hyperion by the head and slammed him down into the sands with amazing force. A small pillar of sand rose up from the impact before Zabrak repeated the action. After a fifth slam, Zabrak held Hyperion up high before dropping him. Rearing his fist back, he let the attack fly and crashed it against Hyperion's body. Buryoku, force. Augmenting his physical prowess by increasing the density of his body, Zabrak's hit allowed the punch to deal enough force to send Hyperion spiraling through the air, skating along the sands. Zabrak smirked before he decreased his density, making him very light. In a blur of speed, the silver-eyed mage sped towards his opponent, but quickly had to dodge as he saw a beam of light head towards him. Zabrak looked behind him to see it was Hyperion's spear. Hikari no Kyojin no Yasukani no Magatama, Light Titan's 8 Shaku-Kurd Jewel. Suddenly multiple beams of light shot forth as Hikaru's spear released the light energy stored within it. Zabrak crossed his arms in front of his body, small explosions of light energy burning his skin before a numerous amount exploded at the same time and sent the density magic user soaring. A golden light then filled Zabrak's vision and an axe kick was coming down on him. Hyperion's leg was coated with light energy. Hikari no Kyojin no Ama no Murakumo, Light Titans gathering clouds of heaven. The blade of light that was Hyperion's leg smashed down on Zabrak's form, but due to his dense body, the attack did no more than just send Zabrak downwards. However, moving at the speed of light had its perks as Hyperion took off through the air, collected his spear and reappeared beneath the falling Zabrak and let loose an arc of light energy. Zabrak grunted as he was slightly burned by the attack, only to grit his teeth in pain to keep from screaming as a light-infused spearhead was lodged in his back. Twisting, Zabrak landed on his feet before yanking out the bloody spearhead and threw it back harshly at Hyperion. Hyperion held out his arm to catch it, but was in shock at how strong it was. The throw from Zabrak sent Hyperion tumbling along the sands before Zabrak appeared in a blur of speed and kicked Hyperion in the side. A strong roundhouse followed as the silver-eyed mage used his speed to catch up to his opponent before reaching out and grabbing him. Rensa, affecting Hyperion's density, the Titanslayer found his body to become increasingly heavy and he was forced back to earth by his opponent's magic. Having landed heavily on the sands, Zabrak took advantage and pummeled Hyperion into the ground before concentrating a great amount of magic into his hands as he clasped them above his head. He jumped backwards and the weighted Hyperion could not move as Zabrak let loose the attack. Ochita Hoshi, Fallen Star. A dense orb of magic energy fused with the air to form an orb of dense air molecules. The orb shot forth as Zabrak swung his arms downward and the orb of magic and air fell down on Hyperion like a falling star and left a large crater in the ground, and Hyperion was now laying motionless on the ground in pain due to being unable to move. The sand cloud died down and Zabrak walked up to Hyperion and reverted the Titanslayer magic user's density to normal. Good fight, Zabrak stated as he yanked Hyperion to his feet with his great strength. Same to you. That magic of yours is dangerous, density magic. That's what it is, Zabrak informed him. Suddenly, The Tartaros member and Zabrak looked to see they were suddenly back in Tartaros' main room with the others. Well done, Zabrak Granful. To have defeated one of my best, I can see why Brain chose you. The Oracion Siete members congratulated Zabrak while Brain gave the large man a nod of pride. Meanwhile, Gaara and Shukaku's tired forms were being supported by Blue Note, who held them like they were sacks of rice. Hades, though your member did not defeat mine, Gaara and Shukaku have shown immense skill and power. They are worthy of being in the Balam Alliance. Now, Gaia shall lead you all back to the surface. Gaia, if you would be so kind. Of course, Master. Gaia bowed lightly before ushering the two dark guilds back towards the entrance of the guild quarters. As soon as the door to the guild house closed, the room suddenly became filled with killing intent. The master of Tartaros turned to a slightly weakened Hyperion. You lost. Weakling. The flames in the fireplace seemed to grow with the master's growth in vocal volume. Hyperion dropped onto his knees and hands. I'm sorry, Master, but I did not take them seriously. You said yourself that it was merely a test, so I held back. The dark blue flames seemed to have calmed down a bit and the master snarled. Hyperion. If you were not one of my best and brightest, I would kill you on the spot for losing to such insolent buffoons like the one Brain has. However, you were unaware of the situation and so I will let you free, but though it is partially my fault. Know that no matter what the situation is, my guild is the one to be victorious. The next time something like this occurs, in any conflict whether it be actual or merely a test, you do not hold back. You go and destroy the opponent and make them know that Tartaros is the strongest. Am I clear, Hyperion? Crystal, Master. Good, now go back to your quarters. Yes, Master. The armored man left the main room. The master watched the flames in the fireplace once more, the shadows produced hiding everything, but his eyes. Those storm gray eyes closed as the master took this chance to rest. Who is that little pest that was watching us, though? He thought. Looking up, the gray orbs aimed at the ceiling surface. Lucy released a light cackle as it watched from atop the ceiling. In a plume of black smoke, the ebony devil headed back to Raventail to relay the news of what happened and what it saw, but it was too slow as Lucy suddenly found itself trapped in an invisible hold. Being pulled down by the force, Lucy shivered in fear as it met the angry eyes of the Dark Guild's master. Gulping audibly, the little black devil took in the shadowed face of the master of Tartaros. Oh, that gulp was nowhere near loud enough to measure the amount of fear you have for me, little devil. Now listen, whoever's guild you belong to. I don't really give a crap, so here's what's going to happen. I will crush your skull and your blood will spill and your master will know that you have failed and you have died. Understood? The man's hand wrapped itself around Lucy's head. Only the face was visible. Lucy continued to shake and squirm to get free, face filled with fear. Only for that fear to be replaced with mischief. The master of Tartaros didn't even have time to move and crush the devil's head before black smoke enveloped Lucy, and now all the gray-eyed master held was air. Eyes narrowed in hatred, the master of Tartaros released a roar of frustration. That stylized R was what stuck in his mind, however. I will have Gaia look up this guild. Whoever the hell you are, you better watch out for when I figure out who you are, you insolent spies. Tartaros will come for you. Northern mountain range, icy peaks, fury unknown area. Snapping awake, he glanced around as if he had lost something. He patted himself down and found that he was indeed alive and well. Strange though, I could have sworn that avalanche would have killed me, Gray muttered to himself. Ah, but it would have had I not intervened, a female voice spoke. Gray's head snapped to the side and his eyes widened as he gazed upon a very beautiful woman. She was very tall, about 10 feet tall, with long legs, narrow waist and DD-cup breasts. She wore an elegant pale blue dress that one thought only members of royalty would wear and seemed to blend in with the snow because of its extremely light shade, and despite the freezing weather, she wore no shoes. Her hair was wavy and was dark blue in color, and an ice blue tiara was worn atop her head. However, her most definitive feature was that her entire complexion was comprised of a light blue color. Her blue eyes stared at Gray with wonder. Who are you? Where am I? What the fuck is happening? You're blue. The woman laughed at the young ice mage's reaction. Ah yes, you certainly are an interesting human, aren't you? Yes. You're definitely someone worth training if you were able to last a month against the wolves I keep sending down to test you. Wolves? Wait, you sent those wolves? And what test are you talking about? Calm down, Gray Fullbuster, I mean you no harm. You know my name too? Well, this just keeps getting less creepy by the second, doesn't it? Gray spoke with sarcasm, unknowingly standing up and stripping his pants and shoes. The blue-skinned woman before him looked at him oddly as he performed the unconscious act. Well, before I begin, here are your belongings that I retrieved from the cave you made sanctuary in. Put on some garments, would you? The woman smiled, but the annoyance was as plain as the blizzard going through the air. Gray gawked in shock before pulling out his extra clothes from within the bag and put them on. Dressed in a white shirt and jacket, a pair of black pants and black boots, Gray got back up to stare up at the extremely tall woman. Alright, Woman. You tell me what the hell is happening because I'm supposed to be buried under 300,000 cubic feet of snow right now and yet I survive. Who are you? Grave Fullbuster, I have watched you for this past month. The snow wolves I send for you to test your abilities shows your exceptional ability to grow and learn. Though I am aware of the time constraints, I would like to teach you my magic. A new magic? What is it? He suddenly gained a surprised look as a spike of ice rose up between himself and the woman. However, what made it unique was that the icy protrusion was not blue or clear or white. This ice was pure obsidian black. Be black ice? What the? He was interrupted from his asking his question as the woman raised her hand and smiled. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you, Grave Fullbuster. This ice is indeed black. This is the magic I will grant you. It is far more powerful than your ice make and it will allow you to unlock powers and abilities that you have never been able to perform in your life. This magic is a lost magic that is rarely done by beings like myself who live in seclusion to search for a worthy successor. I would like you, student of the Demon Slayer, to take up the mantle to learn my magic. Ice Godslayer magic. Lost magic? Ice Godslayer magic. Just, who the hell are you, woman? He yelled. The woman smiled at that before leaning down to look at him in the eyes, assuring him that this was no lie or illusion. I am Lady Shiva, goddess of the ice and snow and I want you, Grave Fullbuster, to be my Godslayer.